Okay, we're live.
All right, everybody. Here we go into another eventful, very informative podcast. So if you guys aren't subscribed with your notification bells, make sure you do it. Each one of these, I don't know how we do it, but we managed to up ourselves. The information gets more and more quality. And we're going to be talking about today Trump's most important speech that he put out on his own personal social media platforms. And we're going to, that's why we labeled it Reading Between the Lines. What did he mean? Why did the president of the United States, of all the speeches he's given, right? Speeches at the United Nations, speeches in the White House, speeches at different holidays. Why all of a sudden does Trump label this video that he puts out his most important speech potentially ever? That has some weight behind it, right? He's the president of the United States. He has a lot of power. He's a powerful man. He runs the most powerful country on the globe. And he's saying, listen, guys, this is the most important speech I may give ever. And what did he mean by that? What does that mean? And we're going to get into that and react to that video today. So sit back, enjoy, get the popcorn. And if you guys haven't already seen that video, we're going to be watching it right here into this one, in this podcast. So we can watch it together. Or if you guys have already seen it, it's always good to watch it again. I've watched it about 2-3 times now. And each time I go through it, I pick up on little subtle cues or little subtle drops that you might have missed the first time you watched it. And Trump's very good at doing that. One thing I've realized as a guy who's in his 70s, he understands how to play information warfare and play the social medias a little bit. I got some family members in their 70s. They barely know how to use an iPhone. So I'd give it to Trump. He's got a lot of intelligence when it comes to how to get out there and relay this information. So let's get into it today.
Yeah, I'm about ready to start this video here. Actually, I'll get ready to pull it up. But in the meantime, while I am doing that, I just want to say, even for those of you who aren't, supporters of Trump or don't even care for the guy much, or you're apolitical, at the very least, we all remember another really important president in the past that gave a profoundly important speech, right? Now, I'm sure at the time, maybe people were like, I don't know if it's going to be important or not, right? But it turned out to be pretty important, right? Remember the guy, we call him with the three the acronyms that we refer to him as JFK? Remember JFK? Remember that guy, John F. Kennedy? Anybody? I sure do. And yeah, really important speech. What about Eisenhower, right? What about, was it Eisenhower or was it? That warned about the military industrial complex or whatever. So, a lot of presidents in the past, this isn't the first time, a president, whether it's at the beginning or the end or somewhere, anytime during their presidency. And I mean, Trump is seeing some writing on the wall that they're trying to knock him out of even having the potential of getting a second term. So, if you're on your way out, you have no potential, or it doesn't look like you have potential for a second term, probably a good time to send out some information that people really need to hear about. So that's what we're going to do in this video. And that's why I think it's really important, and Matt thinks it's important, and I definitely agree in covering this particular this video. So let's get right to it here. We're going to share it up here, folks. One sec.
Well, so many people, people who are maybe not into politics, who probably aren't even watching these type of videos then, but those type of people, they care about what Justin Bieber's got to say. They care about what their, Cardi B's got to say. Well, you should probably care what the president of the United States got to say. Even if you're not political, this man, what he says and what he can do in office has a lot of sway over your individual lives, whether it's tax rates you're put in, whether it's the laws you live under, the freedoms that we enjoy, the tyranny that you also enjoy. So you better pay attention. You better pay attention to this man very closely today. His words have weight. And, we all clung to Obama's speeches as well. I wasn't a supporter of Obama and the Bushes and the Clintons, but you know what? I still listen to them because even what they say matters because, well, they have a lot of power and influence. So you better pay attention to these people, whether you like them or not, because they have a lot of power and influence in the position that they keep.
Thank you. Yeah, you better believe it. Okay, I just wanted to make sure everything's still going to work. I did reduce the volume in case you didn't notice, or not the volume, but the actual rate to 480p instead of 720, because unfortunately, I think we might have issues running this in a high definition format or setup under my current internet connection. But don't worry, as you can see, you can still see it just fine. And even more importantly, you're going to be able to hear exactly what he's got to say. So without further ado, let's just get straight to dealing with this video.
This may be the most important speech I've ever made. I want to
Click the
provide
mic.
an update on our ongoing efforts to expose the tremendous voter fraud and irregularities which took place during the ridiculously long November 3rd elections. We used to have what was called Election Day. Now we have election days, weeks and months, and lots of bad things happened during this ridiculous period.
Well, actually, let me just first start out. Sorry, folks. I know we didn't get very far into the whole video at all. Sorry, but that's just the way it is. Thought just flew right on the top of my head here. It's like, yeah, let's talk about this. It's true. Everyone knows, especially in the U.S., right? Unlike in some countries around the world, like even Canada, where it's like, well, you don't actually have set election dates. The U.S., you do. That just fucking hit me like broadside of this, like someone smacked me on the side of the head just thinking right now. You actually have dates set in stone, basically, for U.S. presidential elections. So even if you have mail-in ballots or any of these other fucking things that the Democrats have been trying to do in terms of gerrymandering or rigging up the system to make sure that they win, right, and Trump loses, at the very least, yeah, on the day of election and that night, I mean, I can even understand if you give till the next day, right? Like, 24 hours, let's say. But what the fuck? But in reality, you don't have an excuse for that, because if you're someone that's got to mail in your ballot, well, if you got your ballot back in, August, September, or even October, what the fuck took you so long? Right? Mail that shit in so that it's in on time. There should be some clear, concise rules, obviously, for this stuff. I mean, that's just barely scratching the surface of just how much was wrong with this current election, and I guarantee many other past elections as well. But at the very least, yes, people have understood historically, and I don't know of any precedent, not of any that I've ever learned about. Yeah, I pay close attention. I've listened to lots of historical context in terms of U.S. elections, and I'm not privy or knowledgeable on any situation where the election wasn't called other than, remember that whole thing with Al Gore and Bush and the whole thing with the hanging chads and all that shit, right? But it definitely wasn't nothing even remotely close to how insane this election is unfolded, and it didn't have anything to do with the fact, but how much you want to bet back then, there was probably some, shit, some smelly stuff that was going on even then. But once again, there's no excuse for not knowing, who the president-elect is going to be on election night, or at the very least, the following day. So, yeah, that is one thing I will say. There's no excuse for taking, days or weeks, or ultimately might end up being months to find out who was actually properly elected president of the United States. Right? That's my initial thoughts. Did you want to add to that, Matt, or do you want me to just hit play?
No, just hit play. Let them roll with it.
Cool. Going in now. Here we go.
Period of time, especially when you have to prove almost nothing to exercise our greatest privilege, the right to vote. As president, I have no higher duty than to defend the laws and the Constitution of the United States. That is why I am determined to protect our election system, which is now under coordinated assault and siege. For months leading up to the presidential election, we were warned that we should not declare a premature victory. We were told repeatedly that it would take weeks, if not months, to determine the winner, count the absentee ballots, and to verify the results. My opponent was told to stay away from the election. Don't campaign. We don't need you. We've got it. This election is done. In fact, they were acting like they already knew what the outcome was going to be. They had it covered, and perhaps they did, very sadly for our country. It was all very, very strange. Within days after the election, we witnessed an orchestrated effort to anoint a winner, even while many key states were still being counted. The constitutional process must be allowed to continue. We are going to defend the honesty of the vote by ensuring that every legal ballot is counted and that no illegal ballot is counted. This is not just about honoring the votes of 74 million Americans who voted for me. It's about ensuring that Americans can have faith in this election and in all future elections. Today, I will detail some of the shocking irregularities, abuses, and fraud that have been revealed in recent weeks. But before laying out just a small portion of the evidence we have uncovered, and we have so much evidence, I will explain the corrupt mail-in balloting scheme Democrats system.
Now, before we get into the election stuff, what he's about to get into, isn't it beautiful, Dad, to see that a couple podcasts back, I laid out 5 key things that I wanted to be done. And one of those things, and one of the things I kept hitting on, was the fact that this man has so much weight by doing exactly what he's doing, putting in camera, putting that beautiful backdrop of the White House behind him, and blasting through the mainstream media firewall, because they have to either not cover it or cover it and try to spin it. But because the guy's going to pull out charts, he's going to bring out the data, he's going to show the proof. This is exactly what I said, and many patriots before me were saying at the time that he needed to do. You know, there was a period after where he had this like month or so where he was playing golf on the golf course. He's being quiet. Now, he could have been strategizing. He could have been, you know, we don't know all the ulterior motives behind that. But it was getting to a point where time was clicking by, and we were like, God damn it, Trump, you got to get out there on the TV. The main, you know, as much as the Rudies are doing it, as much as all the other patriots are doing it, the Alex Joneses, the Stop the Steal rallies, it's easy for the media to attack these individuals. They'll attack Rudy with the Borat clip. They'll attack Alex Jones being crazy. But you, the president, standing in the White House, as that is your backdrop, saying with charts, they stole this from me. Nobody can take that. That is the most powerful thing and the most powerful image and propaganda tool he could use to educate the American people and his base. And this is why he labeled it as the most important speech he ever made. He is using that mantle and he's laying the foundation so his base understands if he has to do whatever he's got to do in the next couple months or a month to make sure that he's going to win and stay in the Oval Office, that he's laid the footwork with the propaganda that he's doing today to justify it. This is what we're seeing, you know, and we'll get into in my documentaries, we'll get into later about what I think he's doing. And I think a lot of this is taking a military approach, not so much the domestic operations like CIA, NSA, FBI, or DOJ. I think he has lost faith in those organizations. You can hear the president himself say he has. So what does he do? He turns to his other branch of the government that has a lot of power and can also conduct operations, who also have court systems and who also can do FISA warrant applications and stuff to spy on his enemies. And that's what I think he's doing. He's the commander-in-chief. And you'll hear, that's what I think he's doing. This is a military speech, is what I think I'm witnessing right now. He's saying this to his military operatives. He's talking to the patriots. And he doesn't care what the mainstream media is going to say. He's going to show you the evidence. And let's get into it. It's beautiful to see.
It is. And that's one thing I'll point out to you folks is thanks to us not just covering this, and we're going to be doing it in its entirety, it's also going to be recorded as well. So no matter what YouTube does or anyone else does to try to silence, suppress, or deny us the ability to put this out there, this is going to be on record, and they're not a damn thing they're going to do to stop it. So let's continue on.
Automatically put into place that allowed voting to be altered, especially in swing states, which they had to win. They just didn't know that it was going to be that tough because we were leading in every swing state by so much, far greater than they ever thought possible. While it has long been understood that the Democrat political machine engages in voter fraud from Detroit to Philadelphia to Milwaukee, Atlanta, so many other places. What changed this year was the Democrat Party's relentless push to print and mail out tens of millions of ballots sent to unknown recipients with virtually no safeguards of any kind. This allowed fraud and abuse to occur on a scale never seen before. Using the pandemic as a pretext, Democrat politicians and judges drastically changed election procedures just months and in some cases weeks before the election on the 3rd of November. Very rarely were legislatures involved, and constitutionally they had to be involved, but very, very rarely, and you'll see that as we continue to file our suits. It's constitutionally absolutely incorrect what took place, even from a legal standpoint. Many states, such as Nevada and California, sent millions of live ballots to every person on their voter rolls, whether those individuals had requested ballots or not. whether they were dead or alive. They got ballots. Other states such as Minnesota, Michigan, and Wisconsin instituted universal absentee balloting right in the middle of an election year, sending absentee ballot request forms to all voters on all rolls. It didn't matter who they were. This colossal expansion of mail-in voting opened the floodgates to massive fraud. It's a widely known fact.
I mean, come on, folks. This is something, obviously, that has no historical context. The only context that the Democrats are using is the pretense of COVID-19. Well, you know what? You can't use the pretense of COVID-19 to suggest that the only way you can have proper elections in 2020 is by, sending out this 80 to 100 million ballots, right? Basically just enticing people. If that was normal, then nobody would be speaking out against it, right? But it's not normal. And to use the excuse of COVID-19 as the pretense or as the political cover to suggest that, well, like I say, well, in Canada, we've had elections since COVID-19, right? No, none of this shit. I know even, in some of the populous provinces, you still have access to be able to vote in a multitudes of ways. And that's another thing too, the thing with the ID, but we'll get to that a little bit further on, is of course you should have to have ID. If you show up to vote, there should be a way to confirm who the fuck you are, and if you're an actual, natural or legal citizen in that country. But the thing that drives me nuts about this whole pretense of COVID is that there is no, like I say, there's no past context. And the fact that they've spent the last 4 years trying to get Trump out of office, I mean, all this stuff, it just leads, the path leads to one thing. They were hell-bent and determined to get Trump out of office. And if they end up managing to succeed by doing that, well, it just goes to show that it has nothing to do with the will of the people. It has all to do with gerrymandering, rigging, or setting up an impossible scenario to make sure your opponent failed, no matter how well or successful he was. Because that's another thing, too. Let's keep in mind, Trump did better in terms of outcome and voters who chose to vote for him this election than they did even last election. And think about how off base the establishment media, the pollsters, and the pundits were then. And if he did even that much better this time against, at least Hillary Clinton, right? She was going to be the first woman, right? She had that name recognition of being a Clinton, like Clinton's wife, right? They were trying to hope to carry on with the hope and change thingy. There was just so much that should have gave Hillary Clinton that advantage that the media, the pundits all pretended that she had over Trump, and she lost miserably. To pretend that Joe Biden somehow not only defeated Hillary Clinton in terms of her results against Trump, but massively outpaced and superseded her accomplishments based on what? Right? Once again, folks, just common sense, a little bit of logic, and some reasoning is all you really need at the end of the day. But we've got a whole lot more on offer yet. There's still at least 40 minutes of this stuff to unfold. So back to the video at hand.
Fact that the voting rolls are packed with people who are not lawfully eligible to vote, including those who are deceased, have moved out of their state, and even are non-citizens of our country. Beyond this, the records are riddled with errors, wrong addresses, duplicate entries, and many other issues. This is not disputed.
I'm going to throw this on full screen.
Disputed. Dozens of counties in the key swing states have more registered voters on the rolls than they have voting age citizens, including 67 counties in Michigan. All of this is evidence. In Wisconsin, the state's Board of Elections could not confirm the residency of more than 100,000 people, but repeatedly refused to remove those names from its voter rolls before the election. They knew why, nobody else did. I knew why. They're illegal voters. It is a travesty that in the year 2020,
Easy on the clicking.
means of verifying the eligibility of those who cast ballots in an election, and such an important election it is, or determining who they are, whether they live in the state, or whether they are even American citizens. We have no idea. We have in all swing states major infractions or outright fraud, which is far more in numbers or votes than we need to overturn the results of a state. In other words, in Wisconsin, as an example, where we were way up on election night, they ultimately had us miraculously losing by 20,000 votes. And I can show you right here that.
Oh, by the way, that reminds me. And I went to look for it yesterday because I was going to use it, knowing that we were going to be doing this stream today. And I'm very disappointed in myself because I usually am very proactive in making sure I screen capture things. But you know what? I somehow, well, what it is because when it came out, I think like most people, once you see that Trump was massively in the lead, and like I say, I talked about it. If there's one thing it might be actually in my stream. I'm not sure, but I'm almost 100% certain that I definitely referenced the numbers. But at the time, I remember Trump after some of these key swing states, the reporting was in, you know how they would do that stuff on the election night when the reporting is like 61% reporting, 90% reporting, blah, blah, blah. And I use that word or that number 61 because I believe that was the lowest number at that time. From all these, I think it was Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. I believe it was one of the Carolinas. Was it South Carolina or North Carolina? Anyways, one of the Carolinas.
North Carolina.
Yeah, North Carolina. Okay, so there was Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. That's what it was. Wow, that's pretty good. I just remembered all 5 of them.
And then you had Arizona and Nevada down there.
Yeah, you had that. Yeah, you had that as well. But like I say, at the time, the way it was being reported, when the numbers were coming in enough that, like I say, all majority, right? 61, 90%. So that means the bulk of the reporting was already done. The bulk of the voting, or at least the reporting on the voting at that particular time on election night, and like I say, no different than every other past election at that point in time, it's like usually they can call the elections like, okay, this is going to be the winner. And at that point in time, once enough of the election results are coming in, that's when they can say, okay, this is how we know who's going to be the winner. And most of those times, at that point anyways, they're correct, right? Even at that point in time, when they were rolling in those votes and Trump was winning and winning and winning. It's like, well, I guess we got to call for Trump. Even though they didn't want to do it, they were like, not everything was finalized, but it's like, that's the way it's going to be. Exact same thing that once again happened this time where Trump was way out in front in terms of how these vote tallies were leaning, because that was the thing. The way they had it set up was it was dark red and blue for the ones that were finalized, which at the time there were, some states easy to figure out that they were finalized. But like I say, these key battleground states, they were either light pink or light blue to represent which way they were leaning in terms of vote participation or results at that time. And in terms of leaning, all of those states, those, like I say, those questionable states, those ones that are the ones that ultimately are determining, the outcome of the election, those swing states, as they call them, they were all red except for one of them. And what was the one that did lean more to Joe Biden? Oh, it was Nevada. That's what it was. It was Nevada, actually, at the time. It was Nevada that was shaded in a lighter blue. So it looked like Nevada might have at that particular time been leaning more towards Biden, whereas all the other key swing states, like I say, North Carolina, Georgia, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, were all shaded in that light pink, or that light red, look more pink, which means that they were all leaning and in favor of Donald Trump. How the hell did that change, right? Not just by a slight margin, but a substantial degree, to the point where they're even suggesting that Biden has not just won the election, but basically proverbially kicked Trump's ass. Once again, that's just me thinking out loud and just pointing out more things that'll make you ponder, or at least question the election results. So,
well, he's going to show it right here on the chart. At that time, as he's winning, like he says, what everyone thinks happened is they said, whoa, Trump's winning. Go down there right now. We got to add some ballots on USBs. We need to get in some truckloads of extra ballots for Biden. And that's what he's showing. The graph shows that they got these dumps of hundreds of thousands in all these battleground states and stuff of these Biden dumps. And it seems to be like in some situations, 100% or 90% of the votes that come in during that period of time in the middle of the night tend to be all for all be for Biden. And I mean, that's just mathematically impossible, guys. That's like flipping a dice there, or not flipping a dice, flipping a coin and just getting heads like 100,000 times in a row. Like, come on, there's got to be, they didn't even try to throw one in for Trump once in a while to make it look obvious. And then there was the whole aspect of, you got, during the daytime, you got people, which in my documentary that I'm releasing, I will show you physical proof. You'll see people messing with USBs. You'll see people who are counting some of these ballots, and they're in perfect, pristine condition. If they're supposed to be mailed in, they have to go in an envelope. If they have to go in an envelope, which means the paper has to be folded to fit an envelope. So if you're in a polling booth and you're counting these mail-in ballots, and you get a bunch of ballots who are all look like they just come out of the printer, mint shaped, not even creased in any of the paper, kind of weird, don't you think? How the hell did they mail it in if there's no creases to put it in an envelope? So, I mean, Trump, we all know all this speech. He's just outlining it, and he's doing it in a way that he's doing it that the public can digest. And what you guys will see in my documentaries, some of the more hardcore stuff, some of the more proof that Trump can't actually come out and always say, because Trump, I find, always tries to water it down for the public.
Your documentaries, though, in this description of this stream as well, because that's
100%.
another way for people to be able to find your content. But I will just say, listen, whether it's actual genuine, see, I even myself, even if I take the initial thought that there wasn't a huge substantial degree of actual fuckery in terms of, pure corrupt vote rigging, right? If you don't think that, well, first of all, just think about what the Democrats and their supporters and their base have been doing ever since Trump come to power. So first of all, that alone should tell you or suggest to you that they're way willing to go low. I mean, so fucking low to the point where they'll fucking accuse the man of, colluding with Russia. They'll impeach. I mean, you've seen what they're willing to do. So, I mean, that alone tells you that they're willing to go very, very low. But even if you're suggesting, like some people are, that, oh no, it's not all like whether it's thrown out ballots or complete, people writing fucking wrong or dead people said, even if you don't believe any of that stuff, the sheer fact, once again, that the Democrats chose this election of all elections to make sure that they did as much as they could possibly do to, like I say, think about it. For me to go elect someone means I have to be, it's got to be fresh in my mind at the moment, at the time, right? Not a forethought, not a bygone thought. It has to be literally present in my mind now. And I actually have to physically get my ass off of my chair, go get dressed, put on my coat or whatever. I guess if you're in warm climate, maybe you don't need a coat, but think of all the steps you have to take to go, sign up or get a ballot, register to vote, and actually go and participate and vote. Whereas, hey, if I could just send it out to you, mail it to you, right? Even though you never ask for it, I'm just going to mail it out like spam, right? Is that how elections work nowadays? Spam. So whether you want to call it a scam election or spam election, I think they would both completely be applicable here. But like I say, if you could just arbitrarily mail out, tens of millions of ballots, and then let's say someone comes along short time after that, right? You're a Democrat, I don't know, volunteer or someone. So you just received your ballot in the mail, and they know when your mailman comes, right? In the local jurisdiction where you live. Well, let's just say 10 minutes later, some knock comes at your door. Knock, 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 knock. Hey, did you receive your ballot? Oh, actually, you know what? Turns out I just got my mail this morning, and yeah, I wasn't going to do nothing with it. I was going to throw it in the fucking garbage because, tell you the truth, I'm apolitical or I'm apathetic. I don't care for this stuff. Well, I'm here. It's right there. Literally take you 2 seconds to give it a good old signage, and I'll take that for you. You don't have to go anywhere. Don't worry about a thing. I got you. Don't worry, right? That, even if you can technically say, well, that's legal. Okay. All right, then. Alrighty then. So you might be able to use the excuse that it's legal, but it doesn't have any past context in terms of historical precedent. No, of course not. This was all done once again, but that's the thing. These people on the left, amazing at political persuasion and propaganda. That's what they're really, really good at. That's the one thing, like I say, I always say, listen, there are a multitude of things that their opponents are vastly superior at, right? But when it comes to the left, bold-faced liars looking you straight in your eye and being able to deceive you, but with a really powerfully persuasive way of doing so and use of the language. Like I say, I bow to the supremacy of the left in terms of political propaganda and their ability to manipulate your mind. That I will say with 100% certainty. Anyways, back to the video, folks. Back to the video, because there's still lots that's got to be said so far. For sure now.
Wisconsin, we're leading by a lot. And then at 3:42 in the morning, there was this. It was a massive dump of votes.
Someone took a massive dump.
Almost all Biden. And to this day, everyone's trying to figure out, where did it come from? But I went from leading by a lot to losing by a little. And that's right here. That's at 3:42 in the morning. That's Wisconsin. A terrible thing. Terrible, terrible thing. But we will have far more, many times more, than the 20,000 votes needed to overturn the state. If we are right about the fraud, Joe Biden can't be president. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of votes. We're talking about numbers like nobody has ever seen before. Just as an example, in certain states, we'll be down by, let's say, 7,000 votes. But we'll find later on 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 discrepancies or fraudulent votes. And that includes votes that went through when they were not allowed to be seen by Republican poll watchers because the poll watchers were locked out of the building. Or people that innocently came to vote on November 3rd, who were all excited about their vote. They were happy. They were proud to be citizens of the United States of America. And they went up and they said, I'd like to vote. And they were told that they can't vote. I'm sorry, they were told. I'm sorry. You've already voted by mail-in ballot. Congratulations. We received a ballot, so you can no longer vote. They didn't know what to do. They had no one to complain to. Most just left and said, that's strange.
A little disturbing.
But many people complained and complained vehemently. And in a lot of cases, they filled out a provisional ballot, which was almost never used, but in virtually every case was a vote for Trump. In other words, they went in to vote and they were told that they voted. And they didn't vote. And they left and they felt horror. And they lost respect for our system. And this happened tens of thousands of times all over the country. That's how desperate the Democrats were. They would fill out ballots of people not even knowing if these people were going to show up. And when they did show up, they said, sorry, you've already voted. And on top of everything else, we have a company that's very suspect. Its name is Dominion. With the turn of a dial or the change of a chip, you can press a button for Trump and the vote goes to Biden. What kind of a system is this? We have to go to paper. Maybe it takes longer, but the only secure system is paper. Not these systems that nobody understands, including, in many cases, the people that run them. Although, unfortunately, I think they understand them far too well. In one Michigan county, as an example, that used Dominion systems, they found that nearly 6,000 votes had been wrongly switched from Trump to Biden. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is what we caught. How many didn't we catch? Are there hundreds of other examples throughout the country? Are there thousands? We just got lucky, and they called it a glitch. But we found numerous glitches that evening. 96% of the company's political donations went to Democrats, not surprisingly. And frankly, when you look at who's running the company, who's in charge, who owns it, which we don't know, where are the votes counted, which we think are counted in foreign countries, not in the United States, Dominion is a disaster. Election authorities in Texas have repeatedly blocked the deployment of Dominion systems due to concerns about security vulnerabilities and the potential for errors and outright fraud. Every district that uses Dominion systems must be carefully monitored and carefully investigated, but not only for the future. Right now, we're worried about the present and what went on with an election that we won without question. Under my lead, the Republicans won almost every state house in the United States, which they weren't expected to do. We won up to 16 seats in the House. The numbers are still being tabulated because there are 9 seats that nobody really knows. They don't know. They're still, 2 weeks later, still under consideration because it's a mess. Republicans were supposed to lose many seats, and instead they won those seats in the House. And a very important election that's coming up will determine whether or not we hold the Senate. David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler are 2 tremendous people. Unfortunately, in Georgia, they're using the same horrible Dominion system. And it's already been out that hundreds of thousands, think of it, hundreds of thousands of absentee ballots have been requested. You check it out, who's requesting those ballots. The difference is it's one state and we will have our eyes on it like nobody's ever watched anything before because we have to win those 2 Senate seats. The tremendous success we had in the House of Representatives and the tremendous success we've had so far in the Senate, unexpected success all over the country and right here in Washington. It is statistically impossible that the person, me, that led the charge lost. The greatest pollsters, the real pollsters, not the ones that had us down 17 points in Wisconsin when we actually won, or the ones that had us down 4 or 5 points in Florida and we won by many points, or had us even and down in Texas and we won by a lot. Not those pollsters, but real pollsters, pollsters that are fair and honest, said we can't understand a thing like this. It's never happened before. You led the country to victory, and you were the only one that was lost. It's not possible. The Speaker of the House of a certain state said, "Sir, I expected to lose my seat. And instead, because of you, and because of that incredible charge and all of those rallies, we had a tremendous victory. And everybody knows it. You were much more popular than me, sir, except I got many more votes than you did. And it's impossible that that happened. There is something wrong. I'll tell you what's wrong. Voter fraud. Here's an example. This is Michigan. At 6:31 in the morning, a vote dump of 149,772 votes came in unexpectedly. We were winning by a lot. That batch was received in horror. Nobody knows anything about it. By the way, there's your line. This is one of many. Here's what is normal.
Oh, what happened to the audio? There we go.
By a lot to losing a tight race. It's corrupt. Detroit is corrupt. I have a lot of friends in Detroit. They know it. But Detroit is totally corrupt. Look at this. Look at this. That's at 6:31 in the morning. Unexpectedly came in. In the recent recount in Georgia, which means nothing because they don't want to check signatures. And if you're not going to check signatures in Georgia, it doesn't work. But we have a Secretary of State and a governor who made it very difficult to check signatures. Why? You'll have to ask them. But without a signature match or check, it doesn't matter. They found thousands and thousands of votes that were out of whack, all against me. This was during a recount that I didn't even think mattered. They found many thousands of votes, and that recount didn't matter. The one that matters is the one that's going on now. That because of the fact it's so close, they had to, by law, give another recount. But the recount has to be a recount where they check the signatures. Otherwise, they're just checking the same dishonest thing. It won't matter. In this case, the signatures on envelopes are the only thing that is relevant. We will compare the signature on the envelope to the signatures from past elections, and we will find that many thousands of people signed these ballots illegally. The Democrats had this election rigged right from the beginning. They used the pandemic, sometimes referred to as the China virus, where it originated, as an excuse to mail out tens of millions of ballots, which ultimately led to a big part of the fraud, a fraud that the whole world is watching. And there is no one happier right now than China.
China.
Many people received 2, 3, and 4 ballots. They were sent to dead people by the thousands. In fact, dead people, and we have many examples, filled out ballots, made applications, and then voted, which is even worse. In other words, dead people went through a process. Some have been dead for 25 years. Millions of votes were cast illegally in the swing states alone. And if that's the case, the results of the individual swing states must be overturned and overturned immediately. Some people say that's too far out. That's too harsh. Well, does that mean we take a president and we've just elected a president where the votes were fraudulent? No, it means you have to turn over the election. And everybody knows, without going much further, and they've seen the evidence, but they don't want to talk about it, what a disaster this election was. A total catastrophe. But we're going to show it, and hopefully the courts, in particular, the Supreme Court of the United States, will see it. And respectfully, hopefully they will do what's right for our country. Because our country cannot live with this kind of an election. We could say, let's go on to the next one. But no, we have to look also at our past. We can't let this happen. Maybe you'll have a revote, but I don't think that's appropriate. When those votes are corrupt, when they're irregular, when they get caught, they're terminated. And I very easily win. In all states, I very easily win these swing states. Just like I won them at 10 o'clock in the evening of the election. So we're not looking to show you 25 faulty or fraudulent votes, which don't mean anything because it doesn't overturn the state, or 50 or 100. We're showing you hundreds of thousands, far more than we need.
That's right, motherfuckers.
Far more than the margin, far more than the law requires. We can show many times what is necessary.
Oh, by the way, let me just interrupt this regularly scheduled program as a libertarian, just to remind you fine folks out there, in case you've forgotten. Voting only ensures that you have a master going forward. That is the one thing that voters have always managed to accomplish over the course of history, that they get to pick a whole new ruler or a master every few years. Now, I will at the very least admit, God damn it, if the American people are going to have the master or a ruler at this particular time, although I would always suggest and highly recommend, no, you don't need that. You're adults, right? You're free men and women, right? But, hey, Trump, at the very least, the one thing I've always understood, which is why even libertarians have been sitting on the sidelines or on the fence for a long time, basically since Trump come to power, and not railing against the guy, is because even libertarians are looking for someone to disrupt the status quo because we know it is precisely and exactly the status quo who has got us to where we are today and destroyed most of our genuine economic and social freedom. So, like I say, folks, just a reminder once again, not suggesting that voting for a master or a ruler is even a good idea or legitimate. Once again, I'm a true, genuine libertarian in the philosophical sense. But I function in this goddamn crazy ass world, right? I'm in the Truman Show like everyone else. I don't have the power to change the fact that we're all living in this fucking Truman Show. And if we're going to have to participate in the Truman Show, well, like I said, Trump was that one challenge to the status quo and the establishment. And if you, at the very least, and I've recognized over the course of the last 10 years that people on the left and the right are all sick and tired of the establishment and the status quo. What it is, though, these days is each side of that tribal team wants to get their man or their woman, when you talk about the left predominantly, because they want to be ruled over by a matriarchy, right? They prefer to be ruled over by the veg. But either way, like I say, Trump was neither that. He was neither an established republic. He was neither even a former Republican, right? That's the thing. Trump came basically out of fucking nowhere. We know what he's all about. Even the media, when they talk about him being a narcissist or superficial, all those things, even if some of those things actually stick to the man, it all still, none of that stuff denies the fact that he was one of the very few people on this planet in the United States as a country that had the power, or I'm sorry, not necessarily power, but the money, right? The fuck you money, the close family tie. Like, he was in a perfect position to challenge the status quo and not worry about if he's going to be harmed economically or socially, because Trump's already shown he's more than, strong and resilient enough. They call him the Teflon Don for a reason, right? He can handle all that shit. So, like I say, at the very least, whether you're a supporter of voting or not, whether you're an anarchist, a libertarian, big L, little L, minarchist, Republican, Democrat, Trump was a challenge to the establishment and the status quo. So the fact that he's being pushed off to the side and shoved off to the side now, like I say, no matter if you want to believe in any conspiratorial vote rigging and gerrymandering, or if you don't want to believe one word he says even during this entire speech, damn well that 1 + 1 = 2 and 2 + 2 = 4. Just use some common sense, some logic, and some reasoning, and you'll get to the same place that Matt and I are at. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say that, I've had this argument with purist libertarians before because, like my dad said, we're philosophical libertarians, we're voluntarists, so we're not advocating for the state, but we understand when it comes to the question, this is why I say to the purists, if you're asked, would you want a master who will beat you and starve you to death, or do you want a master who's going to maybe provide a roof and maybe cuddle you at night? Now, if you're only proposed with those two options, any rational human being is going to choose the one that's going to feed them and not beat the hell out of them and starve them to death. Now, you'll get the Larkin Rose out there who will be a purist, who will say, well, it's still a master. It's still a master. Yeah, but Larkin, you're living in a reality where you're going to get a master no matter what. So you better choose one that's going to be lightly on the whip than the one who is not. And that's what it's always came down to. If I'm going to meddle in politics, which us libertarians unfortunately have had to do, then we're going to try and change it. And we're going to try to pick the characters, the politicians, the arbiters of our policies that are going to try the best to either disrupt government from passing more legislation and rules or try to shrink it. So that's why we got behind the Ron Pauls and the people like that, and why we can come in here and start saying, playing politics and maybe even giving Mitch McConnell a pat on the back if he does something good, even being a libertarian myself. It's playing in a multi-dimensional strategy game here. And I'm not just going to sit back and be a purist because we got a war and battlefield going on. And I'm going to get in there and do anything I can do to reel back tyranny and to push freedom forward. And even if it's just a step or an inch, I'm going to take it. Every inch, every centimeter of freedom that I can get, I'm going to do it. And it doesn't matter if it involves playing in the realm of politics. If that's what I got to do, that's what I got to do.
Yeah, well, because your other option and your other alternative, and this is a sad reality and a harsh reality that us libertarians, anarchists, or purists have to deal with, is you're going to lose. Like I say, if your opponents, if the authoritarians right now that are currently the most dominant force who are bumping up against you and constantly trying to restrict or restrain your freedoms and liberty, It's the immediate threat that you get to deal with most. Once again, not even suggesting. I won't even go so far as to suggest. I'll actually say I respect Larkin Rose tremendously by the fact that he's actually stayed fully convicted in his principles and does not participate at all. I respect that man entirely. Right? I really do. But just like Matt said, and just like he alluded to, even if I chose to take that stance as well and sit on the sidelines, be the purist, I mean, I can virtue signal that I'm 100% an anarchist because I didn't participate. I can claim that, right? But at the same time, man, there's been plenty of opportunities where I might have been able to help my fellow man and woman, right? And maybe I could have helped in some way by choosing to, rather than sit on the sideline, maybe to jump in and fight the good fight. Even if it's not because I'm fighting. Like, Trump's not an anarchist and he's not a libertarian. But if he's someone that's challenging, the political authoritarians or the collectivists, like I say, strategy-wise, I know this is a hard thing. This is the most difficult thing we libertarians have to deal with. We anarchists have to deal with on a regular basis. Is, do you sacrifice? Do you sell out your morality? No, I would never suggest that. Just like right now, I can fully say and defend Trump while still adhering to my principles, because, like I say, I'm not looking to impose my will, my mandate, or my edicts on anyone. But just like with someone pointing a gun at my head, I might want to gain possession of that gun and take it out of their hands. Doesn't mean I want to use it to threaten anyone else, but at the very least, I want to be able to take it out of their hands, right? So
yeah, and politics has been weaponized to such a point now where we're not even talking about philosophical ideas. That I'm basically pro anyone who's anti-communist. I'm their friend. Like if they're a neocon, deep state Republican who wants to rip you off, and at least he's like, hey, I'm not a communist. At that point, I'm like, all right, I'll be a friend with you right now and at least take the communists down. Because, I mean, just look, man, I got this map behind me. This is the beautiful thing here. If you look at the globe, folks, you need to realize that if you were to go by numbers, how many human beings on this planet behind us is ruled under freedom, by individual rights and liberties, constitutions, or run by dictators, third world, crappy assholes, and communists? Well, I would say, you got 1 billion over here in China, plus you got North Korea, you got the Middle East. So less people live under freedom than live under tyranny. So I look at the battle on a global scale here. And right now we're not doing that great. Yeah, we got our pockets of our Western nations and their strongholds of freedom, but on the grand scheme, if you're looking at the whole here as an alien or looking at the whole map, communism's winning, folks. Authoritarianism's winning. There's more numbers underneath those structures of governments. So this is why America is so important. This is why it's the last bastion. And I'm going off the Trump thing. So I think I'll save this stuff after the speech because I got a big thing I got written up about all that geopolitics.
All right, let's get back to the speech.
To win the state. The media knows this, but they don't want to report it. In fact, they outright refuse to even cover it because they know the result. They do. Even what I'm saying now will be demeaned and disparaged, but that's okay. I just keep on going forward because I'm representing 74 million people. And in fact, I'm also representing all of the people that didn't vote for me. The mail-in voting scam is the latest part of their 4-year effort to overturn the results of the 2016 election. And it's been like living in hell. Our opponents have proven many times, again and again, that they will say and do anything to get back into power. The corrupt forces who are registering dead voters and stuffing ballot boxes are the same people who have perpetrated one phony and fraudulent hoax after another. You've been watching it now for 4 years. These entrenched interests oppose our movement because we put America first. They don't put America first. And we're returning power to you, the American people. They don't want America first. They only want power for themselves. They want to make money. That's why they don't want me as your president. I've been investigated from soon after I announced I was running for president, when I immediately went number one in the Republican primary polls. The investigations never stopped. They went on for 4 years. And I won them all. I beat them all. Russia, Russia, Russia. The impeachment hoax, and so much more. Robert Mueller spent $48 million of taxpayer money investigating me for 2.5 years, issued over 2,800 subpoenas, executed nearly 500 search warrants, issued 230 orders for communications records, and conducted 500 witness interviews, all looking to take me down. There was no collusion in the end, none whatsoever. Senator Marco Rubio, the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, stated the committee found no evidence in the end that then candidate Donald Trump or his campaign colluded with the Russian government. And I thank Senator Rubio for that statement. Now I hear that these same people that failed to get me in Washington have sent every piece of information to New York so that they can try to get me there. It's all been gone over and over again. For $48 million, you go through tax returns, you go through everything. The New York Attorney General, who recently ran for office, campaigned without knowing, stating, "We will join with law enforcement and other attorneys general across this nation in removing this president from office." I never met her. It's important that everybody understands, she said, that the days of Donald Trump are coming to an end. And all it's been is a big investigation in Washington and New York and any place else that can investigate, because that's what they want to do. They want to take not me, but us down. And we can never let them do that. Everything's been looked at. A friend of mine who's very smart said, "You've probably seen more than anybody else. You've probably been investigated more than anybody else. And for you to come out with a clean bill of health makes you probably the cleanest person in this country." Some people in this administration, but fortunately not all, have been beaten down and disparaged. They just disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to them. Why aren't they active? Why aren't they involved? There's so much to be involved in. The corruption is so rampant. They just couldn't take it anymore. They were threatened by Democrats with impeachment, and horrible things were said about them. They're good people. Even recently, the head of the GSA was hounded and harassed, as she reported, like she has never been before. What can I say? We caught Comey cold. We caught McCabe cold. We caught them all. We're still waiting for a report from a man named Durham, who I have never spoken to and I have never met. They can go after me before the election as much as they want. But unfortunately, Mr. Durham didn't want to go after these people or have anything to do with going after them before the election. So who knows if he is ever going to even do a report. But if you look at the lies and the leaks and the illegal acts and behavior done by so many people in their desire to hurt the president of the United States, something should happen. The hardest thing I have to do is explain why nothing is happening with all of these people that got caught spying on my campaign. It's never happened before. And
It
it's
happened,
never
folks.
happened to a president.
Yeah, actually, let's talk about the fact that, yeah, the Trump administration was spied on even before he actually became president, even before he was president-elect. That's the thing. His opponent, who represent and are part and parcel of the deep state establishment, yeah, they were busy out there making sure that they were doing all this nefarious investigating and underhanded tactics basically used to lob anything at Trump. That, I mean, like I said, there's no historical context for this shit either. And if there is, then I asked you, share this precedent-setting information that you've got that I'm not privy to. Share it in the links or share it in the comments in this video, and I'll correct my statement. But I know you haven't got nothing on offer, so I'm not too overly concerned about that. This is something that, like I say, they've been trying desperately to bring down Trump long before he ever even became the president of the United States. So once again, whether you want to believe anything that's contained within the speech or all of it, at the very least, you know damn well the kind of tactics, the underhandedness, and the measures and means that the Democrats, his opposition, will go to thwart his effort in trying to have one more term in office. So, I mean, like I say, to me, I don't need much convincing, right? Maybe some of you do. Me, personally, I don't need much convincing because I understand reality. I understand human incentive. I understand politics. I understand what people are capable of that go into politics. So nothing really surprised me when Trump suggests that these people, these deep state actors, were part and parcel and conducive in supporting not just the Clinton campaign, but the Biden campaign, and making sure that they can maintain that status quo, that establishment going forward. Because trust me, they've set up lots of agreements, a lot of handshakes, a lot of winks, a lot of nods with a lot of other authoritarians around the world. And right now, in this last 4 years, they're like, sorry, our plan's been put on hold because Trump. And they want to get back, right? They want to get back to being their dictators and authoritarians and basically micromanagers or rulers over the world, over the globe, right? It's been bothering them ever since they lost that power for this time frame, which, once again, even those of you who don't support Trump or are happy to see him go, well, wait till you see what's on offer and what's in store from the Democrats going forward once they gain the power of the presidency and maybe even the House and the Senate if they get enough of the rigging system entrenched where they make the whole thing work in their favor. Actually, little part of me hopes that actually does take place. Why? Because then, like I say, the veil will fully be pulled back then. You won't be able to deny the authoritarian tactics and the social and economic controls that these petty tyrants, these sociopaths, are just chomping at the bits at bringing to fruition as soon as they do get that power. Okay, back to the video, folks. Did you want to say anything, Matt, or you want me to just come back to the video?
I'll save it for after, I guess.
Okay.
President of the United States. All you have to do is watch the hearings and see for yourself. The evidence is overwhelming. The fraud that we've collected in recent weeks is overwhelming, having to do with our election. Everyone is saying, wow, the evidence is overwhelming when they get to see it. But really, it's too late to change the course of an election. It's too late to change the outcome. In fact, there is still plenty of time to certify the correct winner of the election. And that's what we're fighting to do. But no matter when it happens, when they see fraud, when they see false votes, and when those votes number far more than is necessary, you can't let another person steal that election from you. All over the country, people are together in holding up signs. Stop the steal.
Stop the steal.
Understand how we will challenge this fraud. It is important to know the problems with mail-in balloting. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Nevada, Georgia, Arizona, and most other states allowed anyone to get an absentee ballot and cast their vote without showing any ID. The voting took place entirely on the honor system. No identification of any kind was required. Most Americans would also be shocked to learn that no state in the country verifies United States citizenship as a condition for voting in federal elections. This is a national disgrace. No other advanced country conducts elections this way. Many European countries have instituted major restrictions on mail-in voting specifically because they recognize the nearly unlimited potential for fraud. Out of 42 European nations, all but 2 prohibit absentee ballots entirely for people who reside inside the country, or else they require those who need absentee ballots to show a very, very powerful ID. Throughout the Democrat effort to dramatically expand mail-in voting, the Democrat Party leaders were also feverishly working to block measures designed to protect against fraud, such as signature verification, residency verification, or voter ID. And citizenship confirmation was almost unthought of that we should ask for it. Can you believe this? These are not the actions of people who want fair elections. These are the actions of people who want to steal elections, who are willing to create fraud. The only conceivable reason why you would block common sense measures to verify legal eligibility for voting is you are trying to encourage, enable, solicit, or carry out fraud. It is important for Americans to understand that these destructive changes to our election laws were not a necessary response to the pandemic. The pandemic simply gave the Democrats an excuse to do what they have been trying to do for many, many years. In fact, the very first bill that House Democrats introduced when Nancy Pelosi became Speaker was an attempt to mandate universal mail-in voting and eliminate measures such as voter ID, which is so necessary. Dramatically eroding the integrity of our elections was the Democrats' number one priority for a simple reason. They wanted to steal the 2020 presidential election. All of the Democrat efforts to expand mail-in balloting laid the groundwork for the systematic and pervasive fraud that occurred in this election. In Pennsylvania, large amounts of mail-in and absentee ballots were processed illegally and in secret in Philadelphia and Allegheny counties without our observers present. They were not allowed to be present. In fact, they weren't even allowed in the same room.
Damn.
They were thrown out of the building, and they looked from outside in, but they had no way of even seeing because there were no windows, and the windows that were there were boarded up. Democrats even went to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to block observers from receiving access. There is only one possible reason that the corrupt Democrat political machine would oppose transparency during the vote counting. It's because they know they are hiding illegal activity. It's very simple. This is an egregious, inexcusable, and irreversible harm that stains the entire election. Yet this unprecedented practice of excluding our observers, our vote watchers, as some people call them, occurred in Democrat-run cities and key states all across the nation. Here are just some of the additional facts that we've uncovered. Many voters all across Pennsylvania received 2 ballots in the mail, and many others received mail-in ballots for which they never applied. So many got ballots, they didn't even know what they were for. And again, so many received more than 1 ballot, in some cases more than 2 ballots. And they happen to be, for the most part, Democrats. In Fayette County, Pennsylvania, multiple voters received ballots that were already filled out. They didn't know what happened. In Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, a poll watcher overheard unregistered voters being told to return later to try to vote under a different name. Tens of thousands of voters across Pennsylvania were treated differently based on whether they were Republicans or Democrats. Voters who submitted flawed ballots in some Democrat precincts were notified and asked to fix their ballots, while Republican precincts, and in particular Republican voters, were not so notified, which plainly violates the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. If you were a Democrat, we're going to fix up your ballot, make sure it's perfect. If you were a Republican, don't even talk about it. In Michigan, a career employee of the city of Detroit witnessed city workers coaching voters to vote straight Democrat while accompanying them to watch who they were voting for, violating the law and the sanctity of the secret ballot. You can't do that. The same worker says she was instructed not to ask for any ID and not to attempt to validate any signatures. She was also told to illegally backdate ballots, many ballots, received after the deadline. This is something that is so unconstitutional. And she estimates that thousands and thousands of ballots were improperly backdated by her and many others. Other witnesses in Detroit also saw election officials counting batches of the same ballots many times, as well as illegally duplicating ballots. One observer testified to seeing boxes and boxes of ballots, all bearing the same signature. Another observer in Detroit gave sworn testimony that he saw countless invalid ballots that did not belong to properly registered voters, and then witnessed election workers in Wayne County entering fake birth dates into the system in order to illegally count them. Witnesses have signed sworn affidavits. In other words, you go to jail if you lie, testifying that after election officials announced the last absentee votes had been received, a batch of tens of thousands of ballots arrived, many without envelopes, all voting for Democrats. In Wisconsin, a record number of voters were categorized as indefinitely confined, a status reserved for severely disabled individuals, also for the elderly, that allow them to vote without showing ID. Last year, approximately 70,000 people claimed this status statewide. This year, the number miraculously was nearly 250,000 voters.
Wow.
After election officials in Milwaukee and Dane counties, a couple of the most corrupt political places in our country, urged citizens to improperly register under this status. And register they did in levels that don't exist. In Wisconsin, there are approximately 70,000 absentee ballots that do not have matching ballot applications as required by law. In Georgia, 9 observers have testified to seeing countless irregular ballots without the creases or typical markings indicating.
You know, folks, all this has got me thinking a lot. Illegal or underhanded, 2 words that mean massively deceptive and not legitimate. One, though, is think about what's illegal. I was really thinking about that. Because we don't function under. I mean, let's just put the notion of English common law. Let's just put that in the trash bin where it's been for the last 800 years since Magna Carta, right? Because nobody pays attention to actual English or British common law. Nobody gives a fuck. It's all about political edicts these days. So, like I say, if something is considered legal, right? Even if any of this stuff is considered legal, well, who determines or establishes the legality of something? Government, right? And judges who are part and parcel and paid, their paychecks come derived from government. See, this is the problem, folks. This has always been the problem. It's always been the problem, and it's always going to be the problem is if you get a paycheck, if you look on it and it's signed by the government, right? Anyway, if you get the government paycheck, chances are you'll probably be beholden to that, right? Whereas if you work in the private sector, you're not beholden to government. Your paycheck doesn't reside or rely on you beholding to or aligning with government propaganda or policy. So even if something is considered legal, well, I mean, hey, under Hitler, right? Everything that he does, or he did at the time, I should say, was considered legal. Why? Because he's the one that got the right, the laws and the rules, because he was the fucking leader. He was their master. He was their ruler, just like everyone under Mao. Everything Mao did was legal because, he said that what he does, he is the government. When the government's the one that gets to decree that what they do is legal or legitimate, well, then anything, any immoral act, any immoral deed, any unethical situation is accepted as considered legal because these are the people that make up the rules. So come on, folks. I mean, we always should understand this quite easily, quite readily if you're a libertarian or an anarchist, because, hey, under this current paradigm that we live in, taxation is legal, right? We're all legally obliged to pay our taxes. But what is taxes? But just another word, another expression, a terrible one, for theft or forced income or wealth redistribution. So once again, let's keep this in mind. And sorry if I have to refresh everyone's memory here, but legality is not a synonym or synonymous with moral or ethical. So once again, sorry for taking a minute here to point that out, but I think it's quite vital that I do.
That the ballots did not arrive in envelopes as required. A poll watcher in Fulton County estimated that approximately 98% of the large number of unusually pristine ballots that she witnessed were for Biden. Highly unusual number. In addition, thousands of uncounted ballots were discovered in Floyd, Fayette, and Walton counties weeks after the election. And these ballots were mostly from Trump voters. They weren't counted. They were from Trump voters. In Detroit, everybody saw the tremendous conflict and the horrible way that the two Republican canvassers were treated, so horribly. 1% of the precincts didn't balance. And also, there were more votes than there were voters. Think of that. You had more votes than you had voters. That's an easy one to figure. And by the thousands. In Arizona, in-person voters whose ballots produced error messages from tabulation machines were told to press a button that resulted in their votes not being counted. Also in Arizona, the Attorney General announced that mail-in ballots had been stolen from mailboxes and hidden under a rock. In Clark County, Nevada, where most of the state's voters reside, the standards for matching a signature using the signature verification machine were intentionally lowered to allow large numbers of ballots to be counted that otherwise would never have passed muster.
Aha!
This machine was set at the lowest level. According to one report, in order to test the process, 9 voters in Clark County cast ballots with intentionally incorrect signatures, and 8 of the 9 ballots were accepted and counted.
Damn!
They said you could sign your name to Santa Claus and it would be accepted.
Wow.
Last week, the Clark County Commission threw out the results of a local election after the registrar reported finding, quote, discrepancies that we can't explain. Also in Nevada, some voters were entered into a raffle for more than a dozen gift cards worth as much as $250 if they could prove they had voted. This took place on Indian reservations. One of the most significant indications of widespread fraud is the extraordinarily low rejection rate for mail-in ballots in many key states. These are the states that I had to win. In swing state after swing state, the number of ballots rejected has been dramatically lower than what would have been expected based on prior experience. That means years and years of voting. In Georgia, just 0.2%, that's substantially less than 1% of mail-in ballots have been rejected. In other words, almost none have been rejected. They took everything. Nothing was rejected practically, compared to 6.4% in 2016. And there are those that think that 6.4 was.
I mean, that alone, just that alone is a huge fucking goddamn shocking number. That, like I say, at the very least, if you're a media pundit out there, right? That's the thing with the media. The whole point of having media and news institutions is to hold government to account. So check and verify, right? Look, it wouldn't be too difficult to find out if what he's saying. And the fact that he's using these numbers in such a manner suggests that this is some legitimate stuff here, folks. So, I mean, hey, if you want to take your time out of your day, you can try to dispel or prove what Trump's trying to say. That's what needs to take place, because the media are always going to try to find ways to politicize and try to undermine what Trump has to say. But hey, that's where opportunities exist for us to help solidify and reinforce what he's saying. So like I said, if you've got time on your hands, folks, and I'm always looking for people who are always wanting to share information with me, check out my social media pages. We now have the Liberty Hunter podcast. Go to our Facebook page. Messages there on the Liberty Hunter Podcast Facebook page, or either of our own perspective emails. If you find out some new information regarding or pertaining to this stuff, let us know, and we'll definitely cover it. And if you want to put your face out there, we'll bring you on, and you can, sorry, and you can talk about it yourself and lay out the evidence for yourself. Because once again, at the end of the day, it's not about just soaking up or being greedy with the limelight. I personally don't care. I'll give anyone the opportunity to put themselves out there and give them the 15 minutes of fame if that's what they're seeking. Just be willing to back up anything you've got to say and come with some genuine evidence.
It's a low number. So think of it. Almost none were rejected. And the previous election, 6.4% were rejected. We have seen similar declines in Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Michigan. Ballots weren't rejected, especially if they happen to be in Democrat areas. These irregularities are inexplicable unless there is a deliberate effort to accept ineligible ballots or fraudulent ballots. In Pennsylvania, the Secretary of State and the state Supreme Court, in essence, abolished signature verification requirements just weeks prior to the election in violation of state law.
Once again, another piece of information that you can check and verify.
A judge can't do it. A state can't do it. An official can't do it. The only one that can do it is the legislature. The reason for this is clear. They were not verifying signatures because they know the ballots have not been filled out by the voters in whose names they were cast. In other words, people filled them out that had nothing to do with the names on the ballot. A simple recount of the ballots under these circumstances only compounds the fraud. The only way to determine whether there was an honest vote is to conduct a full review of the envelopes in the relevant states. You will find that many of them, tens of thousands, have fraudulent signatures. A full forensic audit is required to ensure that only legal ballots from lawfully registered voters that were properly cast are included in the final count. This election is about...
Once again, let me just point out, and then we're almost at the end, so I'll just try to keep this brief and summarize it real short. But there's that old saying, too, even when you're talking about check and verify, at the end of the day, well, you better make sure you're allowed to have someone with eyes and ears, or at least a video camera or video evidence to record that transaction taking place, because as we've heard so many times in the past, it's not how many people who show up to vote, but the most important thing is who's the one that gets to count and determine the ballot outcome, right? Because the person that's doing the counting is really the one that determines the outcome. Now, if they're honest, the vote tally reflects the actual will of the majority. Although, once again, as a libertarian, still not a fan of the majority or the mob rule. Now, even under this current structure where it's the majority of the mob rule that matters most, once again, I would say let's at least check and verify it. Is it genuinely the majority or the mob? Because that's the part that really we need to understand. Is it truly the majority or the mob? I don't know. You don't know. There's a lot of people out there putting forth a lot of political propaganda on one side or the other, but the only way we could actually genuinely know is with real world evidence that can't be denied by anyone. And you know what? If you care about transparency, or if you're one of the people that care about democracy, which I'm not one of those people, but if you are one of them, well, if you want democracy to be something that's going forward and it's going to continue going forward, at the very least, you should care about open transparency in regards to how this actual election process played out and the true final tally and results, because this is going to have profound implications for not just the American elections going forward, but the global stage and the global scale in terms of elections in many countries around the world.
About great voter fraud that has never been seen like this before. It's about poll watchers who were not allowed to watch. So illegal. It's about ballots that poured in, and nobody but a few knew where they came from, but they were counted, and they weren't for me. It's about big leads on election night, tremendous leads where I was being congratulated for a decisive, easy victory.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, by morning or a couple of days later, those leads rapidly evaporated. It's about numbers of ballots that were sent that nobody know where they came from. It's about machinery that was defective, machinery that was stopped during certain parts of the evening, miraculously to open with more votes. It was about many other things, but above all, it was about fraud. This election was rigged. Everybody knows it. I don't mind if I lose an election, but I want to lose an election fair and square. What I don't want to do is have it stolen from the American people. That's what we're fighting for, and we have no choice to be doing that. We already have the proof. We already have the evidence, and it's very clear. Many people in the media and even judges so far have refused to accept it. They know it's true. They know it's there. They know who won the election, but they refuse to say, you're right. Our country needs somebody to say you're right. Ultimately, I am prepared to accept any accurate election result.
Okay, like I say, we got a couple minutes left. Just give me 1 second, though, because we finally had someone click in here. And I find this highly suspect, right? Liberty Hunters Podcast is the name of this channel. We have 112 subscribers currently. On our Facebook page, I think it's like 50 or 60. Not even, probably. Might even be below that. So the kind of people that would be conducive to watching this particular video or this particular stream would be people that care about freedom and liberty. You would think or suggest that that should be the case, right? In a normal world, that's the thing. For those of us that are usually accustomed to functioning in the normal world, when they say there's a new normal, that might be a new expression, but it's something that I've understood for at least the last 10 years is there's a lot of people out there trying to upend things so you don't understand what's normal. You don't actually know is up, is down, is white, is black, right? Is in, is out. These are people that are trying to constantly confuse and confound you. And the first commenter, and I've been paying attention, it's been 3, 2, well, actually right now it's 4, typically the kind of people. So not much in terms of traction of the people that are watching the stream, but the first person to comment, think about this, folks. The first person to comment, and let's try to find out who this conscious type person truly is, because that would be an interesting experiment. And it's not hard to find that out there, conscious type person, to find out who you are. But anyways, wait now. Yeah, see? So this conscious type person that is the first person to chime on this liberty-oriented podcast, which how do you get access to this? I don't know, right? Unless it's the opposition doing a little bit of homework. That's always possible, right? Because you know damn well they're paying attention to what we've got to say. Even little channels, because as much as they pretend that we don't have much sway or influence, in reality we do. But basically saying he lost. And my immediate response to that was, what insider info do you have that backs up your claim? Their evidence is bullshit. The results have been certified across the board. Who resulted or who certified the evidence? What a bunch of deep staters. Like, we all understand the swamp. And if you're someone that doesn't believe in the swamp or that there are nefarious actors that, you know, are all about the establishment or the entrenched bureaucracy and maintain that, then you're an idiot. I'll just point out to you right now, their conscious type person is you're an idiot. If you don't believe that there are people who are part and parcel of the establishment, because we're not even talking about today, we're talking about historical context. The Roman Empire, you know, the Egypt, the Egyptians, right? The pharaohs, the monarchs of England. You don't think none of these people have any ability to manipulate things in any way? They're just powerless and hopeless and helpless in some way, right? And their evidence is bullshit. So Trump's evidence is bullshit, is what you're saying. But his opponent's evidence, oh, that's all. No, look at it. It's all legit. What do you mean? Of course, Trump and his team, of course, they're all full of shit. And of course, my team, look at it. It's all proven. Why? Because your team actually acknowledged that they're right and their opponents are wrong. you don't get how politics and propaganda works. Apparently, a conscious type person, right? Because propaganda, it's all about the eyes of the beholder, right? So you might want to fall for that bullshit because obviously that suits you and it suits your narrative and it suits the kind of people that you want to support. But no, I don't believe it for a minute. And you know, you can come onto my channel, you can go onto our channel as much as you want and espouse this kind of bullshit. And I won't even delete it. Not for a minute, not for a second. Why? Because I like to know that there are people like you out there. And actually, because you put yourself on our channel publicly, well, there's nothing to stop me or prevent me from trying to learn, dig down, and find out who the hell you are, right? So just letting you know there, just letting you know. But anyways, let's actually listen to what this conscious type person has to say, because you can tell a lot about a man's psychology or a woman's psychology by the kind of rhetoric they espouse. So let's just read through a couple of these before we finish. We only got a couple minutes there, folks. Or do you want to just finish the video and then deal with what this conscious type person has to
just
say
finish
afterwards?
the video. You got about 50 seconds left. You might as well finish it.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. Okay.
And I hope that Joe Biden is as well. But we already have the proof. We already have tens of thousands of...
Don't you like how he used the term conscious type person, though?
To overturn all of these states that we're talking about.
Oh, that's a lefty if you ever fucking heard of one, right?
The highest office in the greatest country in the history of the world. Every reasonable American should be able to agree, based on what we have already...
The fact that they're paying attention to us with this small viewership...
analysis of the mail-in ballots to review the envelope.
Pat yourself on the back, Matt.
It's about
pat yourself on the back.
The signature. And if they're on the envelopes, we can only review the envelopes, and that will tell us everything. This is the absolute minimum we should expect. This is not just about my campaign, although it has a lot to do with who's going to be your next president. This is about restoring faith and confidence in American elections. This is about our democracy and the sacred rights that generations of Americans have fought, bled, and died to secure. Nothing is more urgent or more important. The only ballots that should count in this election are those cast by eligible voters who are citizens of our country, residents of the states in which they voted, and who cast their ballots in a lawful manner before the legal deadline. Moreover, we must never again have an election in which there is not a reliable and transparent system to verify the eligibility, identity, and residency of every single person who casts a ballot, a very, very cherished ballot. Many very smart people have congratulated me on all we've done. The biggest tax cuts in history, regulation cuts, the biggest in history. We rebuilt our military. We took care of our vets like never before. Space Force, and so much more. But then they went on to say, as big and as important as these events were, the single greatest achievement in your presidency will be exactly what you're doing right now. Voter integrity for our nation. It's more important than any of the things that we discussed. If we don't root out the fraud, the tremendous and horrible fraud that's taken place in our 2020 election, we don't have a country anymore. So with the resolve and support of the American people, we will restore honesty and integrity to our elections, and we will restore trust in our system of government. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.
All right, folks, there you have it.
Thank you. This may be the most important speech I've ever made.
Whoops. All right. So there you have it, folks. And I'll definitely make sure to place a link to this video. Oh, I've already done so, but I'll do it again in the description of this video. Now let's get back to this conscious type person, because once again, it's so easy to pick out the lefties among us just by sheer fact and the rhetoric they espouse. Their evidence is bullshit. The results have been certified across the board. Every judge who lays eyes on their claims passes it out. So this guy, I mean, first of all, let me just say first and foremost, you understand that Trump has appointed 3 conservative Republican type judges. And even your political masters in the media on the left side of the equation or the aisle have suggested as much, which means that the court is now stacked in a 6-3 favor of Republicans, which means that they all accept and identify the very real fact that there's no such thing as an independent, unbiased judiciary or judges anymore. That's the one thing I love about the fact the way these hacks go on the media. They so salivate. They're so stupid at the end of the day because they're so busy worrying about taking down Trump that they spew stuff that they would have never done in the past. They've basically revealed. They've opened the cloak, and now we're seeing all that ugly shit that resides inside, which is to admit that the judiciary is 100% politicized, right? When you say that there's conservative-leaning judges and there's Democrat-leaning judges, you are admitting that your judiciary and even the highest Supreme Court of the land is based on political edicts and political persuasions. So the fact that you're willing to sit here and say every judge who lays eyes on the claims, toss it out, just tells me that, yes, these were Democrat-appointed, Democrat-leaning judges who hate Trump, and we know that. That's the thing. We all understand there's lots of these deep state judges. Hey, hell, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is full of these types, and we all understand that. Matter of fact, they even understand that. And, if they were honest with you, they'd even tell you that straight up, right? So don't play games. This is the thing. Like, you're revealing your own bias by putting forth the kind of rhetoric you're doing here, which is why, of course, I'm not going to delete it. Bring on as much as the rhetoric as you want, because it's just revealing your own internal biases. And of course, I'm willing to engage and laugh and joke about the fact that you're willing to come on this channel and openly admit that you're on team status, right? Go ahead. I like to hear that stuff, because once again, even if you use VPs, it's really not that difficult to find out who the hell you are. And oh, by the way, you live in the information age, right? It's not just social media companies that can find out who you are. It's not even that difficult. So anyways, let's learn about this conscious type person. Trump's legal team has a worse win-loss ratio than the 2011-2012 Charlotte Bobcats. Right? So once again, I didn't even find that was funny. If you were funny, I would have even laughed about it. But oh look, ooh, I'm so scared. I mean that,
right? Well,
right? I mean, yeah, that's actually after that. I was going to give him the time of day. Actually, if he had just started espousing like pure politically biased rhetoric, because it's like I love a good challenge, but as soon as somebody goes on with like, "Oh, I'm so scared," it's like, okay, now you've outed yourself, so now it's like, okay, my job is done. You see how easy it was. See how that's one thing I've always acknowledged about myself. Actually, I'm really good at bringing out people, like the part of them that they like to hide. I'll bring it out in fucking 2 seconds flat. Now, even that, times in the past probably didn't work out good between us. No, but everyone knows that. Everyone that's ever known me is I have an amazing capability by my poke and prodding or the way I use my language. And I'll make sure you reveal your inner self. I guarantee I will, which is why I always invite and entice people to come onto my channel to talk to them. Because no matter how much you pretend, you might think that you've got, oh man, I'm so good at presenting my fucking bullshit with a straight face without giving myself away. I'll bring you on, and I guarantee you, I'll reveal everything about you without having to say a goddamn word, just allowing you to speak. So thanks for proving my point there, conscious type. Anyways, Matt, what else did you have to say? Because yeah, I think, like I said, I think this video was really, really important. I'm actually really appreciative of the fact that you kind of got me to do this, because at first I was, as you know, a little bit hesitant. But you know what? This is something that definitely, like I said, I don't even mind if people want to insult or deride me today, but at least know that I covered it now when it was important to do so. There's archived evidence and it's backed up. And like I say, YouTube could try to delete this video right now. But as you know, we've already got it recorded and we've already got it archived. So there's nothing they can do. But at least to know that I've got that on evidence to show at any point in time going forward, or should I say we have this as evidence that we can show to anyone going forward. This was a wise thing to do. And thanks, Matt, for enticing me to do so.
All right, well, I'm going to go on a spiel here because I have quite a bit written down now. So I'll give the troll his 1 minute of fame, and then I'm going to move on. Because first off, you don't want to feed the trolls. The most time they're disinformation agents. And this poor soul who's not even conscious himself. Because think about it. We're watching a video where Trump is giving a speech from the White House. So as far as I'm concerned, the guy's the president because he's in the fucking White House giving a speech right now. So whatever you say, conscious. And you know what the funny thing is? We'll all get to find out when January rolls around, right? At a certain point, there will be a transition. Someone will come out to be the president. So when it turns out to be Trump, is what I've been predicting. Oh my God, I can't wait for that day because there's been even people in the libertarian, the Trump fan base that have even themselves said, I don't think he's going to win. So it's going to be so great when the few of us who did poke their nose up and say, no, he's going to win. We're sticking to the information. We're sticking to what everyone in the army's saying, and we get proven right. So now I'm going to move off conscious, like I said, because he's just probably disinformation agent troll. Let's get into what the real crux of conversation is today, which is going over the information. So I am smoking a beautiful Cohiban here, and I don't have that much left. But my goal is to, when I get to the bottom of it, have you have a better understanding of how everything's working right now. So let me explain it to you guys. So as people, it may come as a shock to some people. There are people out there who don't want other people to succeed, right? Wow! Oh my God! So shocking information.
Trust me, I've known that. I've experienced that my whole life. Oh, I know all about these people that they'll never be able to accomplish. Like, I'll just use my own personal example. There's been many people in my life have never been even remotely able to come close to the kind of things I've attained in terms of success over the course of my life. And a large percentage of them fucking hate me for anything that I've ever succeeded in. So yeah, I know all about this.
Okay, so there's people out there on this planet who don't want other people to succeed, right? There's the type of people out there who may want to enjoy the beach with their own family rather than everyone enjoying the beach, right? There's people out there who would rather be the only one to own the Lamborghini rather than everyone gets a Lamborghini. And what I'm getting at is that's the mindset that divides us here on the planet and as a human race. We don't understand that there's actual sociopaths out there. There's actual psychopaths out there. And these are the mindset of the people who want to control, to dominate, and don't want you to
those
succeed.
people are raised by some really fucked up
and
people
they want to
part,
succeed on your back. They want to rule over you. Now, as I was getting back with the map, which is so fitting to have behind me today, majority of the people on this planet Earth are ruled under communism, ruled under authoritarianism. And as you can imagine, China would be extremely, extremely wealthy if they allowed some free market capitalism in there. Just look at Hong Kong as an example, right? It's a portion of China where they let a little bit of Western values seep in there. It happens to be one of the economic centers of China's whole GDP. So we understand that freedom creates a lot of wealth. But these people here in China on the map here, the CCP, they would actually rather have less wealth, but have more control than more money and have less control. Okay, this is what it comes down to.
Hold on. This is one area where I got to say when talking about economics is that what it is because they use the yuan or the renminbi for domestic consumption. I'll have to refresh myself, but so they call the Chinese currency the yuan or the renminbi, and one is for domestic consumption and interactions and transaction, and one is for on the international stage, which is pegged against the American dollar. Now, the Chinese have become profoundly rich, those who use the third way, the capitalist system, to benefit themselves by using the American dollar because of how much currency it actually holds, how much purchasing power, even though it's been massively devalued over the last 100 years, well, since 1913, but it's still massively higher in terms of the purchasing power compared to the yuan or the renminbi. So this is what we got to remember once again. The Chinese, the people who are getting rich are the ones who are benefiting from state cronyism or communism or this third way kind of mix with capitalism that are using American dollars. So the American consumers or anyone that's buying and consuming these goods in American dollars are greatly rewarding the Chinese, like I say, the communist government or these corporations who are part and parcel of the communist government because they all get paid in American dollars. Whereas if you're Chinese and you function under the pure full-on internal communist system, well, you're using, like I said, I'm not sure if they call it the yuan or the renminbi in terms of your domestic currency, which is valued greatly lower, which is why those of us in the West can consume our products at the Dollarama or the dollar store at the Walmart at much, much greatly reduced prices compared to what they would properly be in the actual genuine free market. And the reason why that is because, once again, the Chinese have a two-tiered system where they pay their domestic citizens and in a particular currency, but they greatly reward and benefit their crony or corporate counterparts or those who are part and parcel of government or the ruling class by getting those denominated in U.S. currency. So I just wanted to clarify that first and foremost, Matt, because this is something people need to understand about the Chinese third way and how they've become so economically prosperous in the last decade, 2 or 3, ever since all these trade agreements or since they were allowed into the World Trade Organization. So I just want to clarify that real quick.
The point I was making, how America with 330 million people can produce way more wealth than someone who has a population of a couple billion. That's what I was getting at. The only reason that can be allowed is because one is allowed more individual freedom to be more prosperous in the environment to create more wealth. But back to the point at hand. So we understand that these people would actually rather control over utmost freedom and utmost wealth. They may even be more wealthier in that society in the Western values, but they would rather control. So what I'm getting at is there's people in these societies and these power structures who would rather control and power. And this is what it's all about. It's not about the money all the time. So China has had these programs in place for a long time. And these programs are to try to influence foreign government agencies and foreign government actors and to try to make them be more susceptible to communist values, maybe try to pass legislation or rule on the home fronts that are more favorable to communism. We know this happens. You just need to look at Mike Pompeo, and he actually does a speech where he talks to a bunch of governors about this, how, hey, I'm warning you guys, be careful. CCP is very ambitious, and they have programs where they come over here to try and give you a free buffet dinner and whisk you away to nice hotels and take you on vacations. And in exchange, you have to do some things for them, or maybe you don't talk negative about CCP here in America. So we know these programs are being run. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going.
What I think happened is, if you study history, I would say it really started with George Bush Sr. He came into office from 1989 to 93. Now, before that was Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter, Ford, and Nixon, and all those people. And if you go back throughout history, through those times in the 60s and the 70s, usually America would talk negative about communism. That's what separated America. They fought a couple world wars against communism, against authoritarian and fascist ideologies. So it was fresh in the minds of the American population to, hey, we're against communism. We're a capitalist nation. And then I seen this change. And it was unfortunately around the time that I was born. So I've only known nothing but New World Order trash because I was born in 91 and George H. Bush Sr. came in 89 to 93. So I've been born into this crap. And so who do we got now? It goes from George Bush Sr.
All you ever know.
Exactly. It's gone from George Bush Sr. Then it goes over to Bill Clinton. And then it goes from Bill Clinton, and then it goes back to George Bush, the kid. Then it goes from him over to Barack Obama. So this is multiple generations. This is quite a long time, right? From 89 till the last years that Trump's got in, that I have noticed that during those administrations in particular, they have been favorable to China. There hasn't been the rhetoric of, hey, we're against communism. We're against communism. And even with Barack Obama and stuff in the more recent years. So what I think happened is the Chinese have been using these programs going way back into the Nixon era, going way back into the Kennedy eras, but they understood them. And then when they got approached by these communist agents trying to infiltrate America and infiltrate and bribe politicians and governors, they said, hell no, we're America. We're not cool communism over here. But I think we got lazy. And we got these few families in, let's call them the Bushes, the Clintons, and the Obamas, who were easily influenced to be bribed. They wanted to enrich their families, and they didn't care so much about America on the whole and capitalism and the principles that made America great. They cared about George Bush. Can I get some some cocaine and enrich my family and just hang out on the ranch and run America. Weehaw! And I think these were the actors that played a key role in the downfall of America, and why I think that they should be held accountable one day. So what I think happened is finally China punched through that wall. They got through to George Bush Sr., and they were like, wow, we can actually influence this guy. Now, why George Bush Sr.? Well, if you know George Bush Sr., he was also in Skull and Bones and Yale and all. So he had a little funky fraternity boyhood history. Anyway, he liked to go to these Bohemian Grove, all that type of stuff, right? So that, to me, showed to me he could have been bribed and blackmailed, because maybe when he was at these fraternity groups, he was doing some things that maybe the public would seem weird or abnormal, or sexual perverse behaviors and stuff like that. So the Chinese probably infiltrated and got access to that. And this is what these programs do. They try to if they can buy you off, can they blackmail you with material? And they use all these different tactics to control you. Either you'll cooperate voluntarily with bribes, or they might have to threaten you or your family to cooperate. But they will find a way to infiltrate and get their control. So I think this is what happened. George Bush was their first guy. And then it was easy. Then Bill Clinton comes behind him. Well, Bill Clinton is a sexual predator. We know this by look. He got impeached by getting a blowjob in the White Office, in the Oval Office. The guy couldn't even wait till he's done work. He had to get his dick sucked at the Oval Office. He just right. And then all the other history of the Clintons and all their sexual perversions. So we know they could have been heavily blackmailed by the Chinese. And this is probably what the Epstein stuff is, and why nobody wants to talk about it. Why he got off in jail. And a lot of this is blackmail programs. And it's not just China. Multiple nations run them. The Russians ran them with their hookers that they called the Red Sparrows and stuff, to try to infiltrate CIA agents and stuff like that. So we know multiple different powers use them around the globe. But when I look at the map, the only one I'm really worried about is China, because they're the biggest, they have the most power, and they're in second place. And what do we learn about being in second place? If you're in second place, it sucks. You always want to be like, oh, first is right there. You would rather almost be in third, fourth, fifth, sixth, because then at least you can strive to make it up there. But second is always like, ooh, we're this close. And China is very ambitious, and they want that first place power. They want to be the superpower. And the only thing stopping them is beautiful America over here, glory and free. Now, they want to get rid of this. They want to get rid of our values over here. Why? Because our values can hold them accountable. So the communist Chinese, they do well under their society, the 2 billion that are in the party, but the billions that they rule under live under terrible situations where they have no due process, where they can be organ harvested, where they can be taken away to concentration camps and all these other type of things. But the Chinese, the CCP, the 2 million that run it, well, they don't have to follow by the rules, right? They can rape, murder, kill, steal, because they are the CCP. They're the ruling class. And the American ruling class, the Bushes and the deep staters like the Clintons and all these other opposition people, they like that form of governance, because they're those type of people, like I said, who would rather own the beach and be the only ones on the beach than allowing everyone to use it. They're sociopaths, they're psychopaths. They're all about me, 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 me. So they looked at China and be like, hey, you like to control and rule people with an iron fist. We like to control and rule people with an iron fist. Let's bribe each other off. Let's blackmail each other. Let's pay. Let's cooperate and see how we can take down America. So we know this. The Communist Manifesto has been used on America back in the 60s, is being used now again today. And this is what my whole documentary that I'm producing is about. So number one, which it's up on my channel right now, you can actually watch it, is called What They Don't Want You to See, the Deep State Communist Takeover 2020, Part 1, Color Revolution. Now, Part 1, Color Revolution, I talk about how the communists are using the Communist Manifesto of revolution in the streets by using racial division and using violent means to do that, and also peaceful means by convincing people communism and socialism is cool through the universities. So that whole podcast, or that whole documentary, is an hour and a half of clips I compiled together to kind of walk you through a storyline of what happened with the color revolution in 2020. Part 2, which I will release today after I finish this stream, which is awesome, I have called What They Don't Want You to See, Deep State Communist Takeover Part 2, Election Operations, which is how the communists and these other foreign actors, along with the family like the Bidens and such, have used a lot of these programs, Dominion, Smartmatic, the mail-in ballots, even the virus in a sense, as a way to try and take over the election because the color revolution wasn't fully working. So they wanted to use also tactics of election meddling. And that documentary is an hour long, and that's part 2, and that'll explain that. And then what I'm working on is part 3 and part 4. I won't tell you part 4 yet. I'll get you a little teaser of what part 3 is, which is going to be the virus and how that was all planned and how it was perfectly timed out for what a perfect time for a virus to hit the globe. So, that's kind of where I'm at, though, folks. It's understanding that it doesn't take much. It just takes getting Bush Sr., getting the communists to bribe him, and then he gets him, then he gets Bill Clinton, and then, well, we know Sr. can obviously take and control now his son, and then Obama come out of nowhere. But then you go and see these interviews where these 3 guys are hanging out saying they're going to take the vaccine together, and they're all best buddies. So it shows you these families are connected. They're together. They go to barbecues with each other. They hang out, these ex-presidents. And these are the foreign actors who have sold out America in cahoots with the communist Chinese. And overall, those guys, the communists, is you get like the Rothschilds, the George Soros, and the people who are just like, we don't care if you're communist, fascist, whatever. We just like control and murder, and we like to call the population, we're eugenics. And those type of people fund both parties.
Yeah, well, here at the end of the day, it's not just Americans, but even people in Canada that don't understand what their fucking leader in this country is all about. Is yes, some of these politicians thoroughly love and envy China's basic dictatorship by the sheer fact that, under authoritarian collectivism, you can pivot your economy around on a dime. You can control the people so easily. It's just so much more seamless. It's so much more efficient to treat people like chattel than to treat them as sovereign individuals. And you know what? If you need any more or further proof for that, well, just listen to it straight from the horse's mouth himself, from Canada's own federal leader. And I'll play that for you right here now. So as you can see, I believe, I got this brought up here. Let me bring it down. This is from 7 years ago. So this was November 9th, 2013, folks. In case you need a refresher or reminder, or this lizard that's in the chat espousing the rhetoric. Yeah, like I say, reality, it's going to slap you up the side of the head once in a while, and we're going to do it right now. Well, or at least I was hoping.
All right, well, while you're finding
okay, here we go.
Get it.
No, it's right here. It's right here. It's getting ready to play. Just give me 1 second here. It's just my internet connection is apparently trying to reconnect. What do you mean trying to reconnect?
Okay, well, when it loads, I'll shut up, but I'll talk to fill the air. So, like I'll say, people, there's trillions of dollars on the line here that, whoever gets in power, whether it's Trump or Biden, there's trillions of dollars that'll be on the line. Oh, here we go.
First, there was controversy about the kind of gathering Justin Trudeau held in Toronto this week. Now there are demands for an apology. Some in Toronto's Asian community say they're shocked by the Liberal leader saying he admired the, quote, basic dictatorship in China. Evie Cuervo has the story.
Every one of us is the victim of the Chinese dictatorship.
For people here from China, Taiwan, Tibet, and Korea, a dictatorship is something to be condemned, not admired. That's why today in a united front, they had choice words for Liberal leader Justin Trudeau.
Can I use the word foolish?
Their anger stems from comments made by Trudeau Thursday night.
Which nation's administration do you most admire?
At a controversial fundraiser dubbed Ladies' Night, Trudeau said this.
There's a level of admiration I actually have for China. Their basic dictatorship is allowing them to actually turn their economy around on a dime.
That comment is an insult to this man. He says he was unjustly imprisoned and tortured, all because he spoke out against the Chinese dictatorship.
But my case was only a tip of the iceberg.
Trudeau's comments also caught federal NDP leader Thomas Mulcair by surprise.
I found it a bit silly for Justin Trudeau to say that what he admired the most was a dictatorship, frankly. I've always been rather fond of democracy.
I know. First of all, he said democracy, which is just another dictatorship, but by a majority rather than a minority. That's the thing, folks. Dictatorships can happen whether it's let me ask you this. Let me pose this question to anyone that's watching this video. Would you rather have your life controlled by a gang of people or by a single person? I would say none, right? My personal answer to that question would be like, not a single person, not a group. I don't want to be a slave, subject, or serf to any gang, group, or individual. But this is the thing. Of course, Thomas Mulcair would say, well, no, we shouldn't say that. We should have democracy where the majority get to gang up on the minority. Right? It should be all about gang politics and gangs controlling other gangs, right? No, that fact that you just give a small group of people dictatorial powers, well, that's bad. No, you should have larger numbers of people having dictatorial powers. It's all, at the end of the day, the most important aspect of it is dictatorial powers, right? Not how many people have access or control, right? That's the thing with these authoritarian collectivists such as Mulcair and Trudeau and anyone else that's part and parcel of his ilk, or like the conscious type person. What a joke that is. That's quite funny. Thanks for the added entertainment, as if I wasn't already entertaining well enough. But hey, like I say, anything else that adds heightens to the humor to the equation, I'm all for it. But I mean, there it is, right there for you, right from the horse's piece of shit, little potato mouse himself, right? He said he admires basic dictatorship. And of course, the American establishment and the corporations. I mean, think about the corporations, right? That got to offshore all their businesses and pay dirt cheap slave labor in foreign countries such as China. Of course, if you're a corporate CEO, right, that has this fucking close quasi relationship where it's so close that you can't tell the difference between them with government. Of course, you love the fact that government gave you the ability to increase your bottom line exponentially. Right? Well, at least immoral, unethical people. That's the thing. That's the beauty of the free market, as Adam Smith so rightfully pointed out. Is you don't have to rely on anyone being prudent in terms of holding themselves to high standards in terms of morals and ethics. The market will assure that. That's the beauty of the free market. Free market means free people. Free people suggest that, hey, I'm not going to frequent or participate in anyone that's trying to fuck with me or using authoritarian control to manipulate my economic decisions. The free market means no. Bad actors fail quite quickly. Good actors are steadily increasing their bottom line because they're doing the right thing. That's what functions under free market. Anything that is absent of freedom or the free market, well, it's all about manipulating and picking winners or losers. And all these people who are doing that at the end of the day is saying, I like to be the winner, therefore I like authoritarian collectivism and control in terms of economics. Of course, if you're a loser, it's just like saying, well, I would like someone to fucking kneecap or handicap, what's that guy, the fastest guy on earth? Like, I don't know, some of these fast sprinters, like, I would like you to kneecap that guy so that I can beat him at a race. And of course they would thank you they would be actually really appreciative of the fact that you kneecapped their opponent and they got to win the race. But you got to remember that these are the kind of people that want you to kneecap genuine winners. People will put in that hard work and effort to be properly the winner under a proper scenario where there was no manipulation, no scheming, no trickery, or underhandedness. So are these the kind of people you're going to trust? Or the rhetoric they espouse? I sure shit don't. Okay, so let me pull that back down there. And that'll too be added to the link of the description in this video. So you too can share this with all the status or authoritarian collectivists among you.
Yeah. All right. So back to my rant. So like you just seen in the video. So there's Trudeau.
Sorry for interrupting the rant, man. But I thought that was important.
So there's Trudeau who comes out and says, I'm favorable towards China's dictatorship. Now, whether at that point in time in his political career, the Chinese had already infiltrated and got their people around Trudeau and influenced him with bribery, depending on money, vacations, whatever the form of bribery came in for, or that sent up a big red flag to the agents and the Chinese who then said, whoa, we should go look at Trudeau and see if we can influence him because he has a big favorable opinion of how we run our country. Now, when he got to answer that question, he did not say America. He didn't say, no, I like America, our neighbors down north. I like freedom. I like liberty. I like how that. No, he says, I like dictatorships. I like communism. So, if he says that, you guys should understand it. If that's what he says in public, if that's what he says in public to a group of people he's speaking to, you can just imagine his inner thoughts and what he actually thinks when he's up there controlling.
It was mostly women. Hey, gotta remember it was a women's group, right?
Yeah.
Gotta remember here, and I'm just going to point that out. There was a bunch of women that were admiring this guy, right? And I gotta speak out to you ladies. Listen, and I've seen this. Trust me. Not only have I seen, but I've experienced this my whole life. Stop being so enamored with a guy just because he's good looking. For fuck's sakes, like I said, I've even experienced this personally. And you know what? I don't even respect a woman that will fall head over heels over me and listen to anything I've got to say without thinking critically, just because they got fucking lust in their eyes. Right? Come on, ladies, you got to do better. You got to do better than that. Anyways, go ahead, Matt.
So there's trillions of dollars on the line here, folks. Depending on if Trump gets in, he's going to slap tariffs. He's going to go after China. He's going to tell them that they're run by authoritarianism, and it's not the way that the America is the best, the West is the best, and that's very damaging to China. And like I said, there's trillions of dollars in circulation that's potentially going to get redistributed. Now, whether is it going to be redistributed into the powerful pockets of the globalists who have continued to enrich themselves over the years, or if you get someone like a Trump in, it maybe goes into social programs, building the wall back into the people's pockets and making America great. And that takes money away from China, takes money away from potentially Israel, India, all these other places that America spends their money for overseas. So all these foreign agents, if all of a sudden Trump's getting in and his policy is we're bringing the money back home, then yes, there's a lot of invested interest in making sure all those countries that are losing all that money from Trump's bring it at home policies to try to sway Trump to not take the money out of their countries, or to make sure Biden wins, who will continue to dish out the money. Like Trump has said, and other people said, isn't it crazy we could spend millions of dollars to make sure the Afghanistan election is secure and run, but we can't even secure our own election at home? Obviously, they've done this on purpose. So this is the bigger scheme, folks. And what my documentary goes into, and what I understand, and why I don't feed the trolls, is because most of these people don't have the research capability to understand how these things will play out. Let's just say it that, or you could be more nasty and say some of them lack the mental acuity to understand a lot of these complex issues, which is fine. And then history will be our best predictor, right? If Biden is sitting in the White House in January, then Conscious is right and I was wrong, and he can continue to troll me on my channel. But Conscious, if in fact Trump is not, and all these other people watching our videos, and even some of them in the liberty movement who are saying, I still don't think Trump has a chance in hell winning, if he gets in, then I hope that makes a big asterisk, a big highlighter over top of content creators like myself, who then come out of that when 80% of the people are saying, no way he's going to win, and then we actually were proven right. Maybe then you should start listening to us come January, February, if we've been proven right so far. And why do I talk with such confidence? I'm listening to military intelligence and military generals. That's where my information comes from. It doesn't come from CBC, doesn't come from CNN. It comes from the actors who actually have sway and power in politics. What's CNN going to do, right? They can write articles, they can propagandize the people, but they physically can't go in and actually do too much, right? But someone who's a general who runs a small army corps underneath them, who maybe can then open up operations, and when they look into voter fraud, or maybe these military generals are open up operations into going after the deep state, and they're telling the public, hey guys, we got this in the bag. And you see Michael Flynn floating right now in the public, which I don't know how I feel about, but going in under martial law, if they try to take this election from Trump. When I listen to these individuals speak, they have a lot of weight behind their saying. Conscious can dismiss them as conspiracy theorists, just like the Young Turks and all the CNN officials do. Oh, he's conspiracy theorist. He's conspiracy theorist. But these are the individuals working in the government, having actual influence and say. When Mike Pompeo, who gets in there and says, we're going to have a smooth transition to the Trump team, what does he know? When a general gets out and says, oh, yeah, we know about Hammer and Scorecard, our CIA helped develop it. It's been used successful on a bunch of different elections around the world. But, we can't tell you that, national security. We wouldn't want our enemies and some of our friends to know that we've actually used our military intelligence to sway their elections. When you get people down in Venezuela and you get this Juan Duro saying, oh, it's contested, I'm the real president. And the other guy down there saying, no, I'm the president. And they're down there, they're saying there was some kind of messing around with the elections down there and who might have won. So don't tell them that the CIA might have been involved with that, and it was Hammer and Scorecard. And then when the Trump says, wait, well, why is it that our servers and some of these votes are stored in Frankfurt, Germany? Why don't we store them here in our own country, right? Kind of weird that we store them in foreign nations. Yeah. So that's what's going
Well, let
on,
me
folks.
just
There's a
say-
lot of military operations going on behind closed doors, and the public's not knowledgeable about it because, well, it's military operations. It's under the guise of national security and keeping things secure. And these generals, they look at the election and they look at Biden. When they look at his son's laptop and they open up and go, oh, God, nasty. His son's doing what with these underage girls? What's this video of him talking to Obama in the White House about selling America out for a couple $2 billion to allow China to militarize the South China Sea? When these generals hear this intelligence, which they have, they look at Biden as a national security risk. They look at that man as if he gets in office, he could then potentially tell our military secrets, some of our operations, some of where our agents are located overseas. It could maybe put us in a military disadvantage by allowing China to build up the South China Sea and take over places like Hong Kong and Taiwan, and America starts to decrease in power and they creep closer to first place power. So our military generals know this, and that's why I listen to them, because they're the ones who will wage the war. Am I going to listen to a conscious who probably has never picked a gun up and done anything courageous in his life? Or am I going to listen to General Michael Flynn or these individuals who went to Afghanistan, who actually put their lives on the line, who actually got in gun firefights and are saying, listen, guys, if Biden tries to take this election from us, we're willing to die for America's principles. You better watch out. When those patriots speak, they have weight behind what they say.
Well, let me just take the other side of that whole equation entirely, because actually, part of me, I'll just say right now that I'm actually, well, I hope Trump, like, it would be nice if Trump got his second term, right? But if Trump doesn't, I think the liberty movement gets a bigger bump. I know it sounds counterintuitive there, folks, but I really firmly believe, because whether you're talking about freedom fighters or liberty lovers, or even just, let's say, the nationalists, right? The white nationalists, right? The far right, the all right. Everyone's been kind of sitting on the fence and complacent and like eating their popcorn and watching how this all played out for the last 4 years because they had Trump as their man, right? I'm actually saying, you know what? As much as I, got respect for Trump and all that he's done to challenge the status quo and the establishment, part of me is like, I don't want to see it to take place, but hey, if it means actually maybe we increase, we speed up the timeline before actually more and more people pivot towards libertarianism and actually understand liberty, is maybe if Biden does get in power, maybe actually that hastens the pace, quickens the pace, and we get there that much quicker, because that's the thing, folks. At some point in time, like I say, the truth is going to be revealed in terms of what the Biden administration is all about. And you'll see that how it unfolds based on the policies that they implement. Right now, because most of the Trump policies have been conducive and beneficial to liberty lovers or freedom fighters, right? Or at least the propaganda behind it and how it's been portrayed by the Trump administration. A lot of them have been sitting on the fence like, okay, I'm not going to rock the boat too much here. I'm just going to see how this plays out. Let's watch this spectacle as it unfolds, right? But once they realize that, oh, shit, the gig's up, now we're going to see the opponents and how much they're going to be using against me, well, that emboldens, right? I got to tell you, folks, a Biden administration, right, as much as I'm against it, and I don't believe it would be legitimate, I think a Biden administration for the next 4 years, after the hell that the American and the world has been put through over the last multiple decades, I think actually it might have an inadvertent effect in terms of turning more people towards libertarianism and the true fight for liberty than if Trump had another 4 years. So once again, to me, I'm not like, I got no skin in the game. That's the thing for someone like this conscious type person. He's thinking that like it's a zero sum game, right? It's like, oh, if I prove that Trump's going to lose and Biden wins, I win and you lose. It's like, really? Are you 100% sure on that? Because once again, you got to think about not just the immediate gratification of saying, just like the Democrats are like, oh yeah, I'm going to get Biden. It's like, but you know that you're still going to have a ruler, still going to have a master, and are you really that secure that your master has your best interest at heart? You personally, right? I don't know. You might want to question that at some point in time. I sure as hell do. As a philosophical libertarian, I don't accept that any ruler has my sovereignty and everything that I need or deem that is necessary for me to live freely in their best interest. I've never thought about that for anybody, no politician, not even Trump. So these people that play in this team tribal fucking shit, these people like conscious type person, I get it. And I get it. He's probably just like a lot of the lefties. I get it, man. You're due for, and you've been waiting and salivating for a long time, years now. You want your win. I get it. You know what? Matter of fact, I'll even say, just go ahead and take your little lap, right? Put on go out, buy a couple pots and pans, maybe even buy one of those that you use for the birthday, blow those things out, do all kinds of celebrating. But like I say, I, and Matt will still be here too, we'll be here to point out all the other authoritarian measures and means that your masters are going to use to socially and economically enslave you going forward. So I'm not going anywhere. Even if Trump ceased to exist as the president on January 20th, I'm not going anywhere. Matt's not going anywhere. Liberty, freedom, none of that stuff's going anywhere. The philosophy of liberty is definitely not going anywhere. So you might want to think about this stuff in the long and medium term and not just this, I'm going to just do my quick run around the lap or parade, the fact that my ruler, my master, beat your master, right? It's not going to work good for you. But I'm glad that you at least tried, and thanks for giving us the viewership. If you haven't already done so, I'll say they're conscious type. Please do subscribe and hit that bell notification so that you can inform when we do our next upload, and then you can get on here again and rant and rave against us as much as you want. Matter of fact, there might be a time, and this might shock your sensibility now, so hold on. If you're sitting down, you might actually come to agree with us at some point in time as well. So keep that in your forefront of your mind, or even at the back at some point in time, because like I say, it'll come to reflect on you at some point in time. And I'm more than willing to sit here. It doesn't have to be today. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. It doesn't have to be next week. Liberty at the end of the day, if you're not fighting for that, then you're shooting yourself in your own proverbial foot. And you know what? If you don't try to seek medical help for that, you're going to bleed out eventually.
And people need to understand.
Anyways, that's all I want.
You'll need to get into the mindset. I'm going to try to give you the mindset of what Trump and his generals and the people around him, like Rudy Giuliani, this is the mindset that they're in. If you walked outside as a good human being, and you walked outside and you looked out, and there was a guy beating the hell out of his kids and raping some girl and just doing a bunch of violent acts, you would have an obligation to either intervene or at least call the police or get someone to intervene. Why? Because it's like a moral thing, and you're a good human being. It's your duty to do that, and you would have to, right? So you would never walk and turn away, right? It would eat you up too much. This is the mindset that Trump's generals and Trump is in himself. He knows that Biden is compromised. His lawyers have seen the footage of where he gets his Hunter. I don't want to be too graphic here, folks, but where Hunter Biden's got his niece, sucking on his little doodle and stuff, doing very perverse acts with underage people as well, family members. Sitting in the Oval Office talking to Obama about, selling out the South China Sea, giving up foreign military intelligence, and all these other things. So Trump, he's walking outside and he sees Lady Liberty being beaten the hell out of by Biden's folks, raped and stuff, and he has an obligation, a duty to at least go over there and do something or call the police. And in this case, he has called the police. He's called the NSA. He's called the FBI. Guys, man, they're doing terrible things to glorious America here. This is treasonous behavior. You even heard the words utter out of his mouth, treason, before. And what do? They do nothing. So he has an obligation then to use his last effort, which a lot of people have used in history, which is the army. Before we've gotten into modern societies, it was the armies that went over and took over and conquered. It was the armies who enforced the rules of the kings and the edicts. It's the army who holds the true power, right? They have the guns, they have the might, and all that kind of stuff. And Trump speaks to the army every day and talks them up. And the vast majority of his supporters wholeheartedly voted for the man. So you're not going to now go on January 20th or whatever the date is, and you're not going to pull him out of the office when everyone in God's creation knows that Biden is compromised. He's a national security risk. His son's a pedophile. He was molested and abused his own family and other underage children. They can't allow it, guys. They can't. Fundamentally, in their core, this is why Alex Jones gets so ramped up and on his show. He's saying, this isn't a joke, guys. We're in a fight here. We're in a war. So Trump knows this. So each day he what he's doing, he's trying to tell the deep state, are you going to back down yet? Are you going to back down yet? But at the end of the day, I truly believe when that day comes, he has a safety mechanism, let's call it, a backup plan, that if all else fails, this is why you got Michael Flynn floating it now. What do we know about propaganda? Usually your enemy will float an idea in the public first, so then it can get desensitized and get feedback and get reactions, and then they can act on it later. The Democrats use this as well as the Republicans. So when I see Michael General Flynn coming out on TV in the last couple of days saying, maybe martial law, that's what he's doing. He's sending out propaganda. He's feeling the airwaves. And a lot of the Trump supporters, I was surprised, said martial law overnight would be care if they went overnight and the military rolled in and indicted and arrested Hillary Clinton and all these individuals. And this is why Trump has to get up on that on the White House and do the most important speech he's ever made and lay the propaganda footwork for saying, hey, if I have to bring in the military on January 20 to bar me off in the White House and to arrest my political enemies, who I've given all the opportunity to back down, who have still want to come in here, even though we know they're a national security risk and we cannot allow that he will move the military in and he will have to do what he has to do. And as a libertarian, it kind of scares me. But at the end of the day, if he doesn't and actually goes after Hillary Clinton and all these individuals, then it'll be worth it. But whether it's Trump's martial law or Biden gets in and does the COVID lockdowns, that's a martial law. So it's choose your martial law at this point. Do you want Trump's martial law with the military to potentially go in and arrest a bunch of people, indict them, and hold them in military courts and do what you need to do? Or do you want Biden's martial law, which is basically shutting down small businesses, consolidating wealth, and making everyone else in his political base rich while everyone else suffers under his communist ideologies here in America, as we have the communists take down and now control the American population. So it's not going to work out well. And I think at the end of the day, January 20th is we're going to find out what's going to happen. And I cannot wait. This is the best movie, though. This is why I don't watch TV anymore, folks. Why? This is the best movie. It's got cliffhangers. It's got like twists and turns. And it's like, oh, you thought the election was going to be done on the 3rd. Well, no. Oh, another season, guys. Like, it just keeps going and going. And I imagine it's going to get even more exciting. And then even after Trump does what he needs to do. Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. And even after Trump does what he does, there's constantly going to be forever. And as long as history can go on, we're going to have this battle amongst us, because unfortunately, we live in a world where people can be born God-fearing, Christian-loving American, and you can also be born in a traumatic home and be raised to be a serial killer. And environments create different human beings. And until we can create environments that are healthy, peaceful across the entire globe and raise a bunch of peaceful people, like Molyneux has said with his philosophies, that we can actually start from a child's age to not raise status, to not raise people who want to control other people, then we're always going to have the battle of evildoers constantly trying to take back our rights and freedoms from us. And we always have to be forever vigilant.
Well, let me just say before we tie this up, and you know what, your side of it has been, and not just now, but for the last half hour, you've been cutting out a lot. So I will probably start to tie this up now. But I'll just say first and foremost, just to tie this up, as far as the last and final words for me is, listen, there's an incentive. Now, there are all kinds of areas, and this is something that I would love to delve right down, get right deep into it. But if there's one thing I've always understood, and not only has historical human context, but even out there in the state of nature, is anything, any person, any living being that is fighting for their freedom, for their rights, for their liberties, to be free, automatically gives them an advantage, because the legs that you will go to defend your freedoms are substantially higher than what you will do in terms of, imposing yourself or your will, your mandates, your edicts, or your force onto others. I mean, lots of sociopaths, a lot of control freaks. It's amazing at what lengths that they will go to impose themselves on other people. But what has always been undeniable and a reality throughout the entire human experiment and experience is that freedom ultimately and always wins out, right? You might lose a battle here or there, but you're going to win the war. Why? Because freedom is the overarching most important thing that every human being or every species on the planet realize that what else, what's more important than fighting for your freedom or fighting for your life or livelihood? There is nothing, right? There is nothing more important. And especially when you bring love into it. So when you have other people that you're committed to, right, in terms of interpersonal relationships or children or siblings or parents, there's nothing more powerful than a person that not only has ambition, but the willingness to fight, because it's the last resort. The only other thing that they have is to be enslaved or to succumb or to die, right? So no matter what the authoritarians have at their disposal, and they do have a massive amount of weapons, but in the modern world that we live in today, so do the freedom fighters, so do the liberty lovers. It's a matter of who ends up with those tools in their hands at their disposal. So as much as conscious type or other people might like to play this thing where they think authoritarian collectivism might win at the end of the day, well, once again, you need to learn about human psychology. You need to learn about incentive and how that structures the human mind and the ability and competence of people to fight for their rights and their liberties, right up and ultimately to their death. And I know I'm just one of countless millions or billions of people on this planet that have placed in that situation, if back to the corner, to that point where there is no other means of escape. I can't use the power of persuasion. I can't use my language. I can't talk to people. The only thing I have left at my disposal is what I got to fight my way out of that corner. Well, like I say, you want to see, I'm a pretty good fighter even under normal circumstances, but wait till you see what I got in store when I'm put in that situation. That's the part that our opponents really need to understand. And you also got to understand the kind of people who are willing to be the defenders of liberty, to be that one voice against an opposition of 1,000. As well. Anyways, we both cut out there.
Yeah, can you hear me?
And getting progressively worse for the last half hour. And I know people don't really care much for watching videos when they're cutting up and chopping.
All right, I'll just say my final point then. Yeah. My final point is, like my father just said, the Patriots will win in the end. Why? Because they have patriotism, they have principles, they have God, they have resolve. Our opponents do not. You know, if you look in and you watch the movies, why I like watch the Spartan movies, and you watch, when Persia went up against Greece in the scenes, you had Xerxes who was whipping his slaves, and it's hard to motivate an army of slaves because they don't want to be there. They're being brutalized by their master, and they're basically being whipped.
They're just there for the paycheck.
Run forward and attack that army. Whereas the army that they were attacking, Greece at the time, was what they believed, that they were defending their families. They believed that they're defending their values. And that came across in passion on the battlefield, that they come out with such ferocity to fight because they had such conviction to defend their home and their family and their beliefs. That's what I see in Trump's base and with the Patriots. I see that same fire, that same burningness inside, that they know that they have the right behind them. They have God behind them. They have their values behind them. They have their principles. And when they come up and say why they should win and rule, they could say, well, we rule by these principles, by these, this, and this. Whereas the lefties, they have no morals. They have no principles. When you say, well, what's your movement all about? They have a zillion different points and they're contradictory, or they're useless feeders and stuff like that. I'm not too worried at the end of the day. Like my father said, whether Trump wins, which I think he's going to, or Biden somehow snakes his way in there, the Patriots will not stand for it. And it's time that the revolution start in the minds of men peacefully. And we're doing it. And I think we're going to win the information war. This is why they don't cover any of this. This is why this stuff gets censored. They wouldn't censor the president if he wasn't so powerful. CNN wouldn't be able to come out and say, hey, we can't even listen to tonight's 45-minute speech by the president because it's just full of so much crap. That's literally what they said. They said, we can't cover it. It's full of so much crap. It shows you how much powerful the man's got, what he's got to say. And this is the president. He's saying it. He's telling the Patriots and his base, we won. They stole it from us, and I'm here to fight. So that should be a warning to all the deep state agents and all the lefties to back down, because you're going up against an enemy, yes, who has nothing but conviction and resolve. And when you look them in the eye, they don't waver. And when you do really want to pick that fight, I guess if you do, it's a losing battle. And even the lefties always admit, well, damn it, it's always the right that got all the guns and everything. We were never really pro Second Amendment. So, you know, I'm not pro or advocating a civil war, but if it did pop off, you guys are on the losing side. You have a bunch of disarmed lefties or a bunch of idiots who are anti-Second Amendment. So even if you can all of a sudden one night a communist decides to pick up a gun, all of a sudden overnight he's a pro-Second Amendment member, that's fine, dude, because the redneck Trump supporters, not only have they picked up their gun, but they've also been training with them. So just because you can carry a gun doesn't mean you can actually walk through the woods and shoot or actually carry out operations. That's another thing. This is why I take weight with the military. These generals in these videos that I play, they run military operations. You lefties, you communists, some of you, I'd say, well, some of them run operations, the higher ups. Most of you useless feeders don't run operations. You get out there and you get in a crowd and think you're just going to go out and beat people or smash through downtown. Well, that's not how the military trains their guys. And you think they don't train their guys to deal with revolutions in the Middle East and to deal how to quell revolts and uprisings? Come on, the military is in the Middle East and all these foreign worlds, and this is what they do. They train for this day. And, you know, they've also been doing a lot of training on the domestic front. So maybe in a long sense, they've been preparing for all this stuff. So January 20th, we'll all get to see who's right at the end of the day. History will win, and history will prove who was right in all this.
Right on, Matt. All right, everyone. Like I said, I think that perfectly summarized the video, and we're going to tie this one up, and we'll see you in the next stream. Take it easy, everyone.